Under the misty and cold moonlight, this 10-meter-wide colorful halo is so conspicuous. Oops! Wang Mingyang whispered. This scene was not in the information he had obtained in his previous life. However, Wang Mingyang had doubts before. If Gong Zhan had been here at that time, why didn't he harvest all the lotus seeds? Instead, I only got part of it, and the other parts were taken away by the other 3. Seeing the aura blooming from the lotus in the pond, Wang Mingyang finally figured it out. In ancient times, when lotus seeds matured, they would have soaring auras, but before they matured, they would still have auras blooming. It's just that the movement is not that big. The mutated wisteria seemed to sense the imminent ripening of ancient lotus seeds. The branches hanging on the edge of the rooftop retracted one after another, surrounding the entire pond. Humph! You know what's going on. Wang Mingyang looked at the wisteria flower with cold eyes and saw that it did not directly pick the ancient lotus seeds. The looming black line in front of him quickly disappeared. Obviously, this mutated wisteria also understood that these lotus seeds were not yet mature and did not pick them rashly. Is it the instinct of plants? Wang Mingyang's heart moved slightly. First-order mutant plants would not have such wisdom. He turned around and went back downstairs, preparing to bring Su Yu and the others up. Brother Mingyang, I made a breakthrough! Seeing Wang Mingyang enter the room, Su Yu quickly stood up and said with a smile. Wang Mingyang stretched out his hand to rub her head and said with a smile. Not bad! Not bad! I also made a breakthrough. Mu Ningxue stood up and raised her chin slightly towards Wang Mingyang. Oh? As expected of you! Wang Mingyang was stunned for a moment, then smiled and gave a thumbs up. I'm not bad either. I feel like I'm just a little worse. Liu Chan shouted that his talent was no less than Su Yu's, but he had less fighting experience. Come on! You can do it! Wang Mingyang gestured to him, and then said, Pack your things, let's go to the rooftop. It's almost dark now, why go up there? It's very dangerous at night. Liu Chan wondered, while Su Yu and Mu Ningxue also looked at Wang Mingyang with puzzled faces. You will know when you come up, hurry up! Wang Mingyang grabbed his backpack and walked out quickly. When Su Yu and the others saw that Wang Mingyang was serious, they hurriedly packed their things and quickly followed. When they arrived at the rooftop, the 3 of them immediately saw the lotuses blooming with spiritual light. Blessings and blessings, immeasurable heavenly Lord! Oh my God, what is going on? Didn't I go to the wrong place? When Liu Chan saw this fairy-like lotus, his face was shocked and he couldn't help but chant the honorary title. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue looked at these lotus flowers with fascinated faces. Under the magical brilliance, several lotus flowers exuded dreamlike beauty. The zombies have appeared, and something magical has appeared. There's nothing strange about it. Wang Mingyang smiled faintly and walked to the rooftop to lean against him, but his eyes were a little worried. The lotus flowers cultivated from these ancient lotus seeds shine brighter and brighter under the night sky. Just like a lighthouse, it will constantly attract mutant creatures around it. There are still nearly 4 hours before the spiritual energy explodes. During this period, no one knows how many powerful mutant creatures will swarm in. At the same time, in unknown corners of Blue Star, mysterious spiritual objects began to shine. Lucky or unlucky humans, zombies, and mutated creatures gradually converge on these spiritual creatures, and a fierce battle is about to break out. As time passed, a dense sound of flapping wings came from far to near. Wang Mingyang quickly mobilized the surrounding metal to gather together, firmly blocking the stairwell, forming a mesh cage at the entrance to the rooftop stairway, wrapping the 4 of him in it. The spiritual creature is not yet mature, so let this mutated wisteria flower have a fight with those mutated mosquitoes. Wang Mingyang took Su Yu and 3 others to sit on the mountain and watch the tiger fight. Mosquitoes the size of vegetable plates swarmed in, and the branches of the mutant wisteria waved, and the tiny flowers gathered together to form large purple mouths, constantly devouring the dense mutant mosquitoes. Through the iron net at the entrance of the stairs, Wang Mingyang keenly discovered that there was a significantly larger mosquito king among the group of mosquitoes. This mosquito king is flexible and extremely fast. Every time it passes by the branches of a wisteria flower, it will prick those branches with its long mouthparts. A black halo then appeared on the branches and quickly spread towards the main body of the wisteria flower. It's quite poisonous, Wang Mingyang murmured. The main weapon of ordinary mutant mosquitoes is the sharp mouthparts, but this mosquito king actually has the ability to poison. I don't know which species of mutated mosquito it is. Wang Mingyang carefully reminded everyone of this. The targets of these mosquitoes were temporarily concentrated on the wisteria flower that protected the food, but they could not tell for sure after that. Spring City is destined to be unrest tonight. There is a faint howl of wolves a few kilometers away. It is not known whether it is a mutated dog or a mutated wolf from the zoo. The battle between the mutated mosquito swarm and the wisteria gradually became more intense, and several branches of the wisteria were broken and scattered all over the ground. Those mosquitoes also suffered numerous casualties, either cut in half by the sharp leaves on the branches, or swallowed by the big mouths of the petals. But obviously, this mutant wisteria that is about to be promoted to the second level is much more powerful than this group of mosquitoes led by only a first-level mutant mosquito king. Seeing that most of the mosquito swarms in the air were missing, Wang Mingyang showed a smile. In a flash of thought, the oxygen control ability was activated, directly surrounding the area where the mosquitoes were, and the surrounding oxygen quickly gathered. Su Yu, throw a fireball at that ball of mosquitoes. Oh, okay. When Su Yu heard this, a small dark red fireball flew up from his hand. A round hole opened in the iron net in front of him, and Su Yu threw the small fireball directly. The small dark red fireball flew straight to the place where the mosquitoes were densest and exploded suddenly. A dozen mutated mosquitoes were suddenly ignited by dark red flames, followed by another roar, and the flames in midair spread and burned rapidly. In just a few seconds, the entire mosquito swarm was ignited, and the mutated mosquitoes wrapped in flames continued to fall. Is my little fireball so powerful? Su Yu looked at his hands in surprise, a little unbelievable. Mu Ningxue also looked shocked. After Su Yu was promoted to the first level, was he so strong? Only Li Yuchan looked confused and glanced at Wang Mingyang. Just now, he faintly felt a vague fluctuation in Wang Mingyang's body. This is a little trick of mine. You can understand it as a low-level ability that plays a supporting role. Wang Mingyang smiled lightly and didn't hide it. In the future, he will have more and more powers, and it is impossible to hide them all. Holy shit! Boss Wang, have you awakened 3 powers? Li Yuchan was shocked. What the hell, is it so annoying to be compared to others? Well, that's right. Try to keep it a secret and don't take the initiative to tell outsiders. Wang Mingyang nodded, his expression indifferent. You're awesome! Li Yuchan held out his thumb and didn't bother to ask why Wang Mingyang had awakened so many powers. Everyone has some secrets, right? Su Yu and Mu Ningxue's eyes lit up and they both extended their thumbs. Wang Mingyang ignored Li Yuchan and looked into the air with burning eyes. The mosquito swarm was completely dead and injured, but the First-Order Mosquito King survived. A flying sword flew out like lightning and struck the Mosquito King from behind just as he was about to escape. The flying sword immediately turned into a hollow ball, tightly wrapping the body of the Mosquito King, avoiding the branches of the mutated wisteria flower, and flew directly back to Wang Mingyang's hands. With a cold snort, Wang Mingyang didn't care about the mutant wisteria flower. With its current ability, it couldn't break through the iron cage at all. The hollow ball turned into a flying sword again, and Wang Mingyang directly cut open the body of the Mosquito King with the sword. With good luck, I found a dark green crystal core. Poison crystal core! What a pity! Looking at the dark green crystal core in his hand, Wang Mingyang sighed. Mutated mosquitoes are usually ordinary enhanced-type crystal nuclei and blood-type crystal nuclei. Like this Mosquito King, there are not many with poisonous nature. Several people present were not suitable to absorb this crystal core, unless the poisonous energy in the crystal core was purified. Wang Mingyang doesn't have this ability yet, so he can only flip it casually and temporarily put it into the mustard space. Wang Mingyang, what is the use of this lotus? These brilliants will attract more mutated creatures. Mu Ningxue frowned and asked with a hint of worry. Wang Mingyang smiled slightly, pointed at the mutated wisteria and said, Didn't you see that the wisteria is protecting these lotus flowers? It must be of great use. Blessings and immeasurable heavenly Lord, I have never seen a lotus that shines brightly. It is like a spiritual creature from heaven and earth in myths and legends. Maybe you can become an immortal after eating it. Liu Chan recited the title and analyzed it seriously. Oh, you still want to become an immortal? Are you thinking too much? Suyu expressed disbelief. Is becoming an immortal so simple? I don't know if they will become immortals, but I think these lotus flowers must not be mature yet, otherwise the wisteria flower will not protect them at all and just swallow them up. Wang Mingyang shook his head and said calmly, After the lotus withers, it will form a lotus pod with lotus seeds inside, which will mature slowly. You mean, this mutated wisteria is waiting for the lotus to wither and the lotus seeds to mature? Su Yuxian held the lotus flowers. They were still in buds yesterday, but now they have fully bloomed. It should be like this, otherwise there is no way to explain. Mu Ningxue nodded and agreed with Su Yu's guess. Okay, don't think about it too much. It is estimated that these lotus flowers will take some time to mature. You should be prepared. Once the lotus flowers wither and the lotus seeds mature, I will snatch them as soon as possible. You do your best to stop the mutant creatures that may be attracted. Get the lotus seeds and we will retreat to the northeast as soon as possible. Wang Mingyang waved his hand, pointed to the northeast and said, Good. Clear. Don't worry. The three of them responded in unison, and Liu Chan even walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. He already felt that he was about to break through. While there is still some time, breakthrough as soon as possible can better help Wang Mingyang. The time soon came to 11 o'clock, and there were more and more mutated creatures around. Mutated birds, mutated rats, mutated cats and dogs, zombie hunters. Various mutant creatures appeared one by one. Before they reached the experimental building, these mutant creatures had already begun to kill each other. Several obviously powerful mutated creatures stood around the small square, wary of each other, but did not rush forward. It just drove the low-level mutant creatures to rush towards the experimental building, but the mutant wisteria flower had been promoted to the second level as early as an hour ago. These mutated creatures below the second level are no match for him at all. At the same time, Gong Zhan in the laboratory on the first floor was leading a dozen soldiers, observing through the gaps in the window blockers. Captain, what are those colorful lights on the roof of the building? They have attracted so many mutant creatures. Gulai asked curiously. If he hadn't observed a few suspected second-order mutant creatures, he would have wanted to go out and have a look. I don't know, Xiaoyu, go and call Dai Bin and ask. Gong Zhan looked at Xiaoyu and ordered, and the latter quickly ran towards the elevator. Looking towards the 6th floor, Gong Zhan muttered in his heart that Wang Mingyang has never left. Could it be related to tonight's incident? Xiaoyu quickly took Dai Bin back to the 1st floor. There was still Gu Zemin's laboratory in the underground laboratory that had not yet been moved, so Dai Bin never left. Captain Gong, are you looking for me? Dai Bin came in a hurry, ran to Gong Zhan and asked in a low voice. Gong Zhan patted a soldier beside him to get out of the way and pulled Dai Bin over. What's on the roof? Gong Zhan asked, pointing to the colorful light reflecting the night sky on the roof and the mutated creatures that were constantly fighting with the branches of mutated wisteria flowers. Dai Bin looked up with confusion. From the window of this laboratory, he could only see half of the rooftop. But it was enough for Dai Bin to see clearly what was happening on the rooftop. This is... Dai Bin opened his mouth wide. There was indeed something fishy. It has been happening for a while. There are more and more mutated creatures around, and a zombie wave is about to break out, Gong Zhan said in a serious tone, even though they had already blocked the laboratory tightly. But with so many mutated creatures gathering, who knows what will happen? On the rooftop, several professors from the Department of Botany have planted a wisteria flower that has been planted for many years. Wang Mingyang went up there before and said that this wisteria flower has mutated, Daibin said slowly. Gong Zhan frowned. Even if it's a mutated wisteria flower, it won't cause such a big fuss. What's going on with those colorful lights? In addition to this mutated wisteria, there is also an artificial pond in the center of the rooftop with several lotus plants in it. Lotus? Yes, but these lotus flowers are a little special. What's so special? You said it all at once. Gong Zhan was anxious. These lotus flowers were cultivated from 5 ancient lotus seeds. Wang Mingyang seems to have come specifically to find them. Daibin swallowed his saliva and said hurriedly. Gong Zhan was stunned. Why did Wang Mingyang come here for this? I don't know what his purpose is. Daibin shook his head, hesitating. Gong Zhan thought about how he met Wang Mingyang and couldn't help but slap his forehead. He always thought that Wang Mingyang was a bit unusual, but he didn't expect it to be so extraordinary. Obviously, Wang Mingyang seemed to be waiting for this scene. Thinking of this, Gong Zhan couldn't sit still. Gu Lai Gaoyang, you two come with me to take a look. The others are on standby to guard the underground research room. Gong Zhan gave the order cleanly. Only the 3 of them here have awakened their powers, and their qualities are much stronger in all aspects. Yes, Captain. Gong Zhan quickly opened a gap in the window, and the 3 of them quickly jumped out, and the gap was blocked again. Daibin looked out the window, his eyes flickering, and a special energy filled his body. Gong Zhan and the other 3 walked to the corridor in the center of the first floor, and quietly climbed to the rooftop. The entire experimental building had been cleared of zombies, and the mutated creatures that had gathered now rushed up the walls and stairs. Instead, they didn't notice the 3 Gong Zhan people climbing up the corridor fence. On the balcony of the boys' dormitory, Tianlei looked at the night sky over the laboratory building with a troubled expression, and there were brilliant colored lights surging. In the complex building, Xiao Lu stood by the window, looking down at the tide of corpses gradually gathering around the experimental building. Holding the edge of the window sill tightly, the tiles turned into powder and fell down one after another. In the teacher's dormitory building not far from the small supermarket, Ding Qing ignored the food and drinking water in the room and turned towards the balcony. In the distant sky, a group of dark clouds blocked the moonlight, but in the darkness there was a group of colorful lights piercing the darkness. On the roof of the residential building in the city village, Xinghong, Chao Jing and others stood at the top of the stairs and looked in the direction of the university town. The light that cut through the darkness was reflected in his eyes. Various mutated creatures near the university town, as well as human survivors, have been attracted by the increasingly bright aura one after another. The clouds in the sky covered the moonlight, making the lotus's aura more conspicuous. A second-level hunter was ready to move, lying on the ground and escaping into the shadows. Outside the wall of the Dian courtyard, a giant zombie nearly 6 meters tall roared and kicked down the high wall, running straight from the laboratory building. On the other side, a black and white mutated giant dog the size of a calf, leading a variety of mutated dogs, sprang out from the street and climbed over the wall nimbly. It was almost early in the morning. The energy aura on the blue star was getting stronger and stronger, and the mutated creatures were advancing frequently. As for the first-order zombies and mutated creatures on the campus of Yunnan University, they are appearing more and more. Wang Mingyang frowned, and the mutated wisteria seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. If you accept the burst of spiritual energy in the early morning again, it is very likely that you will be promoted again. Boss Wang, what should I do? Do you want to do it now? Liu Chan had just been promoted to the first level 3 hours ago. At this time, his body was extremely full of mental energy, and his self-confidence was overwhelming. Wang Mingyang pondered for a while, nodded, and said, "Get ready to take action, please be careful. Bao Bao, when you see the corpse of a first-order mutated creature, you should immediately check to see if there is a crystal core. If there is, you must get it." The effective range of Liu Chan's mental power at this time has reached 40 meters, which is enough for the task. Okay, I understand. Seeing that the 3 of them were ready, Wang Mingyang took a deep breath and waved his right hand before a large piece of titanium alloy suddenly landed on the ground. At this time, there is no need to hide his mustard space. No matter that the three people behind him were stunned, Wang Mingyang thought, and the piece of titanium alloy quickly melted and flew towards the rooftop. The metal cage spread out, and Wang Mingyang stepped out. The metallic liquid in the sky instantly solidified into countless sharp threads, cutting towards the sky. In an instant, whether it was the branches of the wisteria or the flying mutant birds, they were all cut into pieces by the network formed by these silk threads. Branches, green leaves, and flesh were scattered all over the sky, and a wave of blood rained down from the entire rooftop. Bah! A huge mountain eagle flew up with blood on its claws. The mutated wisteria flower's trunk trembled, and a burst of green light erupted, spawning branches all over the sky again, and flew toward Wang Mingyang close to the ground. Huh! I don't know whether to live or die. Wang Mingyang snorted coldly, flicked his fingers, and a black line suddenly appeared on his fingertips. The moment this wisteria flower emerged from the black line, its life instinct made it crazily retract its spreading branches, wrapping itself tightly into a sea-packed takrab ball. The next moment, the black line directly crossed a distance of more than 10 meters and appeared at the root of the mutated wisteria flower. The sea-packed takrab ball trembled slightly, and then the thick branches slowly fell to the ground, and the thick main pole tipped over. The branches that had been swiping and lashing just now all collapsed to the ground, and there was no more movement. Instant kill! Wang Mingyang quickly stepped forward and found the main trunk. Emoing directly broke the wisteria flower with his slashes, and a green, emerald-like crystal core appeared in the center of the tree. Hee, good harvest! Putting away the second-order wood crystal core, Wang Mingyang turned his head and looked at the root flower bed of the wisteria flower. Bow bow, come and dig out the roots of this wisteria flower. Damn it, what do you think of me? Li Yuchan looked disgusted, but still ran over quickly. Stop talking nonsense and dig quickly. There might be something good. Li Yuchan stopped talking nonsense when he heard the words, activated his mental power, and the rhizome of the wisteria rose slowly, bringing up a large pile of soil. After Li Yuchan shook off the soil, Emoing waved again, and several beads exuding a strong breath of life fell out of the cracked rhizome. Crystal of life, not bad! Wang Mingyang's eyes lit up and he quickly caught the few beads with a faint green luster. If it were a first-order mutated wisteria flower, it probably wouldn't be able to breed this thing. But at the second level, there is a high probability that it can be conceived. This is also the reason why Wang Mingyang kept it and did not kill it in advance. The surrounding mutated creatures surged up like crazy, but were stopped by the iron net formed by Wang Mingyang's metal control. Several first-order hunters wanted to break through the net with their claw blades. But when the claw blades struck the iron net, it was extremely smooth and broke into countless sections. These iron nets have been shaped by Wang Mingyang to be extremely sharp to the outside world. Here, take one pill for each person. If you are injured, take it. It will be of great use. There were a total of 6 life crystals. Wang Mingyang left 2 to be prepared, and the remaining 4 were all exposed to rain and dew. Everyone took the crystal of life and looked at it curiously. But then, a majestic energy came from nowhere and instantly penetrated all living things on Blue Star. At this moment, all creatures, whether they were running, climbing, or fighting, stopped instantly. At 12 o'clock in the morning, Blue Star's aura energy burst out in an unprecedented amount. The entire Blue Star is immersed in a sea of energy. After an unknown amount of time, Wang Mingyang opened his eyes first, and the burst of spiritual energy seemed to have ended. At this moment, he could clearly feel the free energy in the air, and his whole person was sublimated again. Hey! I'm almost at the second level? Mu Ningxue looked at her hands in confusion, feeling the surge of energy in her body, and a faint feeling of bottleneck appeared again. Su Yu and Li Yuchan also looked shocked. They had just been promoted. But now, there is a faint feeling of being promoted again. Don't just look at it, the lotus seeds are almost ripe. Wang Mingyang interrupted the 3 of them, and the lotus flowers in front of him released obvious energy fluctuations. The lotus petals quickly withered and dissipated, revealing 3 lotus pods wrapped in them. Each lotus pod contained 9 dazzling lotus seeds. The next moment, a beam of green light rose into the sky and shot directly into the sky. Waves of attractive fragrance spread, and the breath of life contained in the green light suddenly made the eyes of the mutant creatures around them turn red, and they all showed extremely greedy looks. "Are the lotus seeds ripe?" Suyu exclaimed and immediately looked at Wang Mingyang. "No, not yet." Wang Mingyang shook his head calmly. "These lotus seeds will not truly mature until the green light completely disappears." At the same time, 3 beams of various colors suddenly shot out from other places in Spring City, shooting straight into the sky. This scene left Wang Mingyang a little stunned, and others also looked surprised. Could it be that more than one spiritual creature from heaven and earth appears? But Wang Mingyang frowned again, wondering if it was a matter of distance. Wang Mingyang always felt that the 3 beams of various colors were obviously not as rich in color as these lotus seed beams. Maybe it's due to the viewing angle. He had never seen this scene in his previous life. I have heard from other people that there are other spiritual beings appearing at the same time. But the strange thing is that most of those spiritual creatures are in other places. Before they had time to think about it, the rooftop suddenly shook. Everyone hurriedly stood up and ran to the rooftop to look down. I saw a 6-meter-tall giant zombie hitting the wall crazily, as if it wanted to demolish the entire building. Not far away, huge rats swarmed in, and a tide of nearly 10,000 zombies surged forward, and the ground began to tremble. "Everyone, let's give it a try. I have a feeling that these lotus seeds can take us one step further." Wang Mingyang stood up straight and looked at the lotus seeds with burning eyes. No matter what happens elsewhere, the most important thing is to keep what is in front of you. "Supreme Tai Zhutian, you don't have to say this. This is obviously the legendary treasure of heaven and earth, and you have to risk your life to get it." Liu Chan said the title, with a strong fighting spirit in his eyes. Taoist cultivation pays attention to the wealth of the Dharma couple, and these lotus seeds are not the wealth among them. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue also nodded, holding the Hangdao tighter in their hands. "Haha, let's have a big fight then." Wang Mingyang laughed loudly, and 2 fireballs suddenly appeared in his hands, and they were thrown directly at the mutated rats that swarmed downstairs. The 3 of them were stunned. "As promised, you just awakened 3 powers. What does this mean now? Doraemon?" While the fireball was flying, Wang Mingyang shook hands with the mutant rats again and activated his oxygen control ability. 2 fireballs quickly shot into the group of rats, causing a sudden meal. The mutated rats with a radius of 5 meters stagnated for a moment, then were sucked up the next moment and flew towards the fireball. Boom! A violent explosion sounded, and the flames generated by the explosion roared again, instantly igniting all living creatures 20 meters around. The magnetic blasting fireball makes its debut, and with the help of the oxygen control ability, its power is terrifying. The fiercely burning flames illuminated the small square. The mutant rat king, who had already run halfway, had a flash in his eyes, turned around, and escaped into the darkness again. The eyes of Gong Zhan and the 3 people huddled on the 6th floor suddenly shrank. "Captain, is this Wang Mingyang's superpower?" Gu Lai asked with a frown. Under the burst of spiritual energy, the strength of the 3 of them has been greatly improved. But Gu Lai didn't think that his flame could have such power. "No, Wang Mingyang's ability is metal control. This should be another girl's ability." Gong Zhan shook his head solemnly. From Dai Bin's words, he already knew the powers of Wang Mingyang and the other 4. Among them is a girl with fire ability. Unfortunately, he never thought that this was another ability of Wang Mingyang. "What should we do? Do we want to continue?" Gao Yang swallowed, and the mutated creatures swarming around him made his heart beat wildly. "Go up!" Gong Zhan nodded and made a quick decision. Even from downstairs, they could see the green light soaring into the sky. At this time, how could they be willing not to take a look? The 4 people on the rooftop have already fought against the mutated creatures, and all four of them are firing on all cylinders. Ordinary mutated creatures can no longer break through the protection of Wang Mingyang's iron net. Only a few bronze-armored corpses could ignore these iron nets and directly pounced on them and smashed them. But the next moment, Wang Mingyang's flying sword pierced his eye socket, and the tip of the sword exploded in the brain of the bronze-armored corpse, instantly killing these difficult iron jars. Zhutian probed in with his spiritual power skillfully, and flew back wrapped in two pale golden crystal cores. "Gold system crystal core, give it to me!" Wang Mingyang took the crystal core unceremoniously, held it in his hand and began to absorb it. Continuously releasing supernatural powers, even with his current energy that far exceeds the same level, there is still a lot of loss. Fighting to support war was Wang Mingyang's plan from the beginning. Energy continued to pour into the body, and Wang Mingyang controlled more than 30 flying swords to shuttle back and forth, constantly killing the mutated creatures on the rooftop. The iron fence, also suppressed by many first-order mutant creatures, shrank to a radius of more than 10 meters. With the appearance of several second-level hunters and bronze-armored corpses, Wang Mingyang suddenly felt the pressure doubled. The second-level giant zombie downstairs was still demolishing the wall. Wang Mingyang frowned slightly and quickly moved to the rooftop. A space-cutting shot, directly from the top of the head downwards, cut the giant zombie in half. A translucent colorless crystal core flew out and was caught by Zhutian. "The enhanced crystal core can be absorbed by the three of you and can enhance and restore energy." Wang Mingyang quickly said that the crystal nuclei produced by generally body-enhancing mutated organisms are such transparent and colorless crystal nuclei. It can be used to restore energy, but the effect is not very good. Zhutian casually threw the crystal core to Mu Ningxue. At this time, among the three of them, Mu Ningxue suffered the greatest loss. She maximized her ice and snow powers, directly expanding the deceleration range to 30 meters, and the temperature of the entire rooftop plummeted. Mu Ningxue was not polite when she saw this. She took the crystal core and absorbed it directly. There are so many second-order creatures, but Wang Mingyang has always been worried in his heart. There have been so many mutant rats, but the smart mutant rat king has always been hidden in the darkness. A burst of intense gunfire came from the north. Wang Mingyang took the time to look, but he saw darkness. He waved his right hand in front of him, and a series of floating light balls appeared in front of Wang Mingyang. At this time, the light ball has not yet lit up, but there is only a little fluorescence in the center of the ball. Numerous floating light balls flew towards the north, reaching the limit of 50 meters. An array of more than 10 light balls floated in the air, spaced 20 meters apart, and suddenly they all burst into light, illuminating a distance of about 200 meters nearby. The mutated mice were squinted by the sudden burst of light. Many zombies were also attracted by the light ball and gathered towards the light range. Several big men in prison uniforms carrying rifles also appeared under the ball of light and quickly retreated. It's a pity that these big men in prison uniforms still exude a faint fluorescent light. Mutated creatures immediately rushed over, and gunshots and miserable howls sounded one after another the next moment. "Snort!" Wang Mingyang snorted coldly. The floating light ball consumes very little, and there is no need to pay attention to it after it is released. Dozens of floating light balls appeared in front of him again, and Wang Mingyang directly scattered these light balls in all directions. Anyway, the burst of spiritual light from ancient lotus seeds has attracted mutant creatures from an unknown number of kilometers around. Not bad for this light source. Dozens of floating light balls suddenly bloomed, and mutant creatures and zombies appeared 50 meters away. Several figures hidden in the darkness were suddenly illuminated, and a huge black-skinned mouse stood out. "Oh, so you are here!" The missing hair on the mouse's shoulders allowed Wang Mingyang to immediately tell that it was the future Mouse King. "Squeak!" As if aware of the faint sarcasm in Wang Mingyang's eyes, the mutant rat king raised his head and let out a sharp hiss. Dozens of first-order mutant rats all around went crazy, flying on all fours and crawling toward the rooftop. After a sudden change, Gong Zhan and the other three people immediately jumped up and climbed directly to the rooftop. When they saw the corpse mountain and the sea of blood, the 3 lotus pods blooming with spiritual light made the 3 of them stunned. "Captain Gong, don't you also want to share the pie?" The corners of Wang Mingyang's lips curled up into a sneer. In his previous palace battle, he probably relied on his Vajra body to take advantage of the chaos and take away a few lotus seeds. But now, I'm afraid it can't be repeated. "Wang Mingyang, what on earth is this?" Gong Zhan frowned upon hearing the sound and turned his gaze from the lotus pod. "You don't need to know. If you want to fight for it, just take action." Wang Mingyang fired a few magnetic explosion fireballs from his hand again and said calmly. Gong Zhan's eyes narrowed. He was shocked when he saw Wang Mingyang release a fireball for the first time. There are many soldiers in the military region who have awakened their superpowers, but no one can have 2 superpowers at the same time. Wang Mingyang, there are even more than 2 types. Those balls of light floating in the wind may also be his masterpiece. This scene that subverted his cognition made Gong Zhan not know how to answer for a moment. One after another, predators and first-order mutant rats rushed out of the darkness with fluorescent lights, and rushed towards the iron fence that had shrunk to a radius of 10 meters without fear of death. At this moment, the zombies and mutated creatures only saw the lotus pods blooming with spiritual light, and they did not pay any attention to the Gong Zhan and the 3 people who were close at hand. Following closely behind were several more powerful second-level zombies and mutated creatures. The iron net shook for a while, and the top wire collapsed under the weight of the corpses. Pieces of blood and flesh continued to fall, followed by crystal nuclei that exuded various colors of luster. Li Yuchan quickly distributed these crystal nuclei to several people. Fortunately, he used his mind power to remove the blood and brain matter in advance. Otherwise, I'm afraid a few people would have to endure nausea to absorb it. A second-level bronze-armored corpse climbed up from nowhere and punched the iron net hard. The sharp iron net scratched the surface of the fist until sparks popped out, but it still did not cut it into pieces. The giant eagle in the sky screamed and swooped down with a whistling sound. "If you dare to come down, you are seeking death!" Wang Mingyang looked at the sound and snorted coldly. A black line emerged in midair, instantly drawing towards the giant mountain eagle. The giant mountain eagle sensed the danger and deflected its wings rapidly, but it was still cut in half by the black line from head to tail. The corpse hit the iron net directly, and a crystal core exuding azure luster was peeled out by Li Yuchan in the air. The melee continued, and Wang Mingyang took the time to glance at the location of Gong Zhan and the other 3. But all they saw was a circular concrete cover covering the place, and Gong Zhan and the other 3 were nowhere to be seen. Wang Mingyang frowned slightly, but he couldn't get away to look for them at this moment. He shook his right hand hard at the outside of the iron net. Under the control of his mental power, the oxygen content in the air outside the iron net began to increase rapidly. "Suyu, wait a moment, don't use fire yet." When Suyu heard this, he immediately dissipated the flames wrapped in his hands and stood back. A few seconds later, several fireballs appeared in Wang Mingyang's left hand. He went straight through the iron net and fired in all directions. The next moment, a series of explosions sounded, and the entire rooftop burst into flames. Mutated rats and other mutated creatures screamed, and the experimental building suddenly fell like a dumpling, with the flaming mutated creatures falling crazily. With one move, all the mutated creatures on the rooftop were wiped out, leaving only a small number of second-level mutated creatures and a few bronze-armored corpses. "Bao Bao, hurry up and collect the crystal nuclei of those first-order mutant creatures. Don't let go of ordinary zombies and mutant creatures. Maybe there will be crystal nuclei too." Wang Mingyang quickly ordered that after the aura breaks out, ordinary zombies and mutant creatures have the same chance of producing crystal nuclei. Although they are all crystal nuclei without attributes, they are perfect for recovering energy at this moment. "Clear!" Li Yuchan didn't waste any time, and his mental power quickly spread, searching into each corpse. At this moment, sudden changes occurred. An extremely strong mental power suddenly appeared, like a sharp cone drilling crazily into the minds of the 4 of them. "Ah! It hurts!" Su Yu and Mu Ningxue were mentally weak, and the powers they were using suddenly dissipated, and they covered their heads and screamed in pain. "This is crazy! It's a spiritual power, spiritual puncture!" Wang Mingyang only felt a stinging pain in his head, but it was still bearable. But this feeling is obviously the work of a superpower or a spiritually mutated creature. Even he was slightly affected, he must be the second level. Liu Chan was okay, his superpower was mainly mental power. His mental power was only slightly worse than Wang Mingyang's, and the tingling sensation was not as strong as that of Su Yu and Mu Ningxue. Wang Mingyang quickly glanced around, only to find a female zombie standing quietly on the slope 30 meters away to the south. "Court death!" Wang Mingyang was angry. He never expected that there would be second-level spiritual zombies in tonight's battle. This kind of zombies are rare among the zombie clan. A trace of black line loomed, instantly cut through the night sky, and appeared in front of the mental zombie's forehead. The next moment, a piece of skull slowly slid down with something red and white, and the spiritual female zombie fell to the ground. "Bao Bao, you must get that crystal core back!" Wang Mingyang pointed at the zombie to the south and growled. Liu Chan understood in an instant. His spiritual power surged out crazily, and he came with several flying swords. A mutant dog suddenly appeared next to the second-level zombie corpse, opened its big mouth and bit directly into the zombie's head. "Fuck! This is fucking mine!" Liu Chan became angry, and his mental power surged instantly. Before the flying sword could fly, a huge force directly lifted the mutant dog out of thin air. The flying swords followed closely and pierced into the mutant dog's head. Seeing this, Liu Chan breathed a sigh of relief, quickly mobilized his telekinesis, and took out a transparent and colorless crystal core directly from the head of the mental zombie. Several flying swords protected the crystal core and returned quickly. For fear of being intercepted by other second-level mutant creatures, Liu Chan specifically controlled the crystal core to land from above his head. Grabbing the crystal core in his hand, Liu Chan quickly looked at Wang Mingyang standing aside. "Absorb it quickly! This second-level spiritual crystal core may allow you to be directly promoted to the second level," Wang Mingyang said without looking back. "This crystal core is perfect for Liu Chan. The absorption of homologous crystal nuclei is more efficient. With Liu Chan's current level, there is a high probability that he will be directly promoted." "Good!" Liu Chan said no more, grabbed the crystal core and began to absorb it. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue looked envious on their faces. The mutated creatures of the fire and ice types had not been discovered yet. Most of them are strengthening type, wind type, and metal type, which are useful for them. But not much. The green light in midair began to slowly become thinner, and the ancient lotus seeds were about to mature. "Ha ha! I want this thing!" A loud laugh echoed through the night sky, and a scarred-faced man in prison uniform suddenly jumped up from the side of the rooftop. Holding 2 rifles in his hands, bullets were fired at Wang Mingyang and the 4 of them crazily. Snort! Wang Mingyang made a cold sound, stretched his palm forward, and yellow bullets suddenly stopped in front of the 4 people. The big man landed with a bang, holding the trigger in his hand until the 2 rifles made a click-click, jamming sound, and then he threw the rifle to the ground. "Give it back to you!" Wang Mingyang flipped his palm, and dense bullets shot out immediately. The scar-faced man rolled violently to one side, and several men who climbed up after him were shot into pieces by bullets, and flew out upside down. Roar! The scarred-faced man stretched himself on all 4s and raised his head to the sky, roaring. His prison uniform suddenly exploded, and his black tiger tattoo suddenly flashed with black light. The phantom of a black giant tiger appeared and merged with him instantly, and the scarred man disappeared. A majestic black giant tiger appeared directly on the spot. Holy crap! A-level transformation power black tiger of evil! Wang Mingyang was shocked. This was the first time he encountered a transformation power since his rebirth. Unexpectedly, the first time I encountered this kind of super powerful A-level transformation ability. The evil black tiger transformed from the scar-faced man jumped up suddenly, swiped one claw in the air, and 5 black blades shot out. The iron net that had blocked many mutated creatures for a long time was suddenly cut open in 5 large holes by black sharp blades. Both are A-level abilities, but the transformation system is much stronger than the elemental system in the early stage. Wang Mingyang didn't have time to think too much. The iron net instantly melted and shrank, forming a thick iron wall in front of the 4 people. The 5 sharp blades struck the iron wall without a hitch, leaving 5 deep scratches. The evil black tiger followed closely behind, and its huge figure jumped directly over the iron wall and rushed towards the lotus pods in the pond. Stop it! The iron wall melted and deformed, and a giant sword condensed in midair. As Wang Mingyang's palm fell, it slashed hard at the evil black tiger's head. The evil black tiger transformed into a scar-faced man, twisted his body in midair, narrowly avoiding the giant sword's attack. There was a loud bang, and the giant sword struck the rooftop, creating large cracks. The 2 second-level bronze-armored corpses were cut in half by the 6 to 7 meter long giant sword, causing blood to flow everywhere. Boy! For the sake of protecting these 3 lotus flowers for a long time, I won't kill you! Get out of here! The evil black tiger's front paws pulled out 5 deep marks on the concrete, opened its huge mouth slightly, and spat out a cold word. Humph, you have a pretty good idea. Do you really think I can't kill you? Wang Mingyang walked slowly, walked to the pond, snorted coldly, and the giant sword melted into nearly 100 flying swords hovering behind him. This evil tiger has actually been promoted to the 2nd level and is faster than Su Yu and the other 3. Simply outrageous. It is estimated that this guy has been on the periphery just now, harvesting the crystal nuclei of first-order zombies or mutated creatures. Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible to be promoted so quickly. Although Su Yu and the other 3 have absorbed many crystal nuclei, only Zhutian has harvested 1 crystal nucleus of the same series. On the contrary, it is not as cheap as this guy with A-level transformation ability. Wang Mingyang's cold words made the evil black tiger's pupils shrink slightly, and a strong anger emerged in his eyes. The scene is about to explode. Just as the 2 were in a stalemate, several more powerful mutant creatures faintly appeared in the 4 corners of the rooftop. A hunter with black markings all over its body grabbed the fence with its dark claws and silently made several gaps. The giant black and white dog jumped onto the rooftop, with tiny wind blades faintly surrounding its body. A large, colorful cat landed silently on the fence. The moment its paws landed on the ground, a few rays of electric light spattered out. The few remaining 1st and 2nd level mutated creatures on the rooftops slowly dispersed, seemingly shocked by the extremely depressing aura in the field. Call! Liu-chan, who had been closing his eyes to absorb the crystal core, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. After absorbing the 2nd level spiritual crystal core, Liu-chan was directly promoted to the 2nd level, and an uncontrollable spiritual power escaped. Seeing that there was another 2nd level superpower in the scene, the evil black tiger and the surrounding mutated creatures were a little ready to move. Wang Mingyang smiled coldly, and hundreds of sharp flying swords condensed from titanium alloy trembled faintly. Bao Bao, quickly collect those crystal nuclei. Are you sure? Liu-chan was a little worried. When he opened his eyes, he already noticed something was wrong around him. With just 1 breath of his breath, he almost made those powerful mutated creatures start to attack. If we collect the crystal nuclei in front of them, I'm afraid we're going to stab them directly. Don't worry, they don't dare to move! Wang Mingyang chuckled, and with the thought, the 3 flying swords flew to the root of the lotus pod, and the sharp sword blades stuck to the lotus pod. The powerful creatures around him roared when they saw this, but their feet remained motionless. Even the evil black tiger is stagnant. He doesn't want anything to go wrong before the lotus seeds are fully mature. Who knows, if the lotus seeds are picked before they are fully mature, the medicinal properties will be greatly damaged. After being promoted to the 2nd level, these creatures seem to have an instinct, and they vaguely feel that these lotus seeds are of great use to them. In fact, Wang Mingyang heard people talk about this in his previous life. But he never got a chance to see him. Now I finally have the opportunity to verify it, and it is indeed the case. Seeing that the scene was frozen, Wang Mingyang took the time to take a vague look at the direction where 3 spiritual lights had just appeared. Frowning slightly, the 3 auras have disappeared. I am afraid that the spiritual objects in the auras have fallen into the hands of others. Although it is a pity, there is nothing to regret. The aura of these lotus seeds in front of me has not dissipated until now. They must be the most precious spiritual objects. Liu Chan smiled when he saw this, and his mental power instantly spread downstairs. He brought up the crystal nuclei one by one and dropped them into his backpack. Suck it quickly! Liu Chan quietly grabbed a handful of translucent crystal nuclei and handed them to Su Yu and Mu Ningxue. Although the aura was much thinner now. But there is at least a radius of nearly 2 meters, and it looks like it will take at least half an hour to dissipate. Taking advantage of this time, maybe Su Yu and Mu Ningxue can also advance to the 2nd level. The 2 women took the crystal core and saw Wang Mingyang's nod, and immediately began to absorb it. The black tiger of evil was the closest to the 4 of them. Seeing the small movements of a few people, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Wang Mingyang was observing silently at this time. He had no impression of these 3 special mutated creatures. But at this moment, any one of them poses a huge threat. What's more, the future Rat King is still hiding in the darkness and out of sight. The aura shrank little by little, making Wang Mingyang feel slightly anxious. Finally, more than 10 minutes later, Su Yu and Mu Ningxue opened their eyes at the same time. 2 energies, one cold and one hot, erupted from the 2 women's bodies, and they were about to be promoted to the 2nd level. At the same time, the spiritual light shrank to the size of a lotus pod, and disappeared suddenly in the next moment. Roar! The mutated creatures that were affected by Su Yu's sudden increase in aura simultaneously shot out like bows and arrows and pounced on the lotus seeds. The floating flying sword had no time to strike down, and the 3 lotus pods were instantly turned into ashes, and the 27 shining lotus seeds fell downwards at the same time. At the same time, a black shadow flashed and appeared in the pond. It opened its sharp mouth and swallowed the lotus seeds directly. Do it! Gong Zhan downstairs shouted angrily. Gao Yang took action instantly, and the entire pond suddenly fell. Caught off guard, the mutated Rat King slumped down and bit into the air with his sharp mouth, making a crisp sound. Wang Mingyang's mental power suddenly exploded, a space wave flashed through, and the mustard seed space activated. A white palm suddenly stretched out from the void, grabbed 6 lotus seeds, quickly shrank back, and escaped into the void again. Wang Mingyang was stunned and quickly checked the mustard seed space. There were only 21 lotus seeds in it. Who? Get out of here! Wang Mingyang was angry. These lotus seeds were something he had been guarding to this day. How could he allow someone to pull out their teeth? Hundreds of flying swords shot wildly, and 2 blood flowers suddenly bloomed in the void at the edge of the pond. With a scream, a figure emerged from the void and fell heavily to the ground. Dai Bin! It's you! Dai! That figure turned out to be Dai Bin, who had been staying on the 1st floor. This kid actually awakened his invisibility ability, and almost stole the lotus seeds that Wang Mingyang had been guarding for a long time. However, with such little strength, he still dares to seize food from a tiger's mouth, which is like lighting a lantern in the toilet. The flying swords in the sky turned into a sharp iron net, covering Dai Bin's head. No! Dai Bin's shoulders and thighs had been penetrated by flying swords just now, and he was unable to dodge at this moment. He only had time to let out a cry of despair before he was smashed into thousands of pieces by the iron net, and a few shiny lotus seeds rolled down from the broken palms. Liu Chan activated his mental power, and 6 lotus seeds flew back in a whoosh. The mutant Rat King stepped on his limbs, and rushed in front of Wang Mingyang first. His sharp mouth revealed 4 fangs, and he bit Wang Mingyang fiercely. It knew very well that the disappearance of more lotus seeds just now must have been caused by this human being. Walk! Wang Mingyang shouted angrily, and all the metal around him turned into flying swords and exploded, shooting in all directions. At this moment, he could no longer wait for the 2 women to advance to the next level. Wang Mingyang reached out and pushed behind them, and the huge force directly pushed the two women out of the rooftop. Ha! Roar! Meow! You're looking for death! The mutated creatures on the rooftop were dumbfounded for an instant. Various angry sounds sounded, and the evil black tiger screamed in anger. The evil black tiger and the three mutated creatures turned at the same time and pounced directly on Wang Mingyang, although it was unknown how he took away the lotus seeds. But at this moment, they all understand that it must be related to this human being. Get out of my way! Li Yuchan roared angrily. His mental power suddenly exploded, and a circular shield suddenly flashed out, repelling the mutant creatures that flew towards him. 5 black threads appeared and instantly moved towards the evil black tiger and 4 mutated creatures. Wang Mingyang grabbed Li Yuchan, suddenly exerted force on his feet, and jumped out of the rooftop. In the midst of lightning and flint, Wang Mingyang once again activated his metal control ability. The flying swords that were knocked away by the mutated creatures suddenly turned into steel spears and were thrust down towards the rooftop. His body fell rapidly, and Wang Mingyang even saw Gong Zhan with a shocked look on his face. Before Suyu even landed, he turned around and slashed a 3 to 4 meter long dark red sword towards the rooftop. Mu Ningxue clenched her right hand fiercely, and an ice flower with a radius of several meters bloomed on the rooftop. Li Yuchan activated Tai Divine Sense again, and a layer of buoyancy suddenly appeared under the 4 people's feet, which instantly slowed down their landing speed. Before the 2 girls landed, steel spears, sword lights, and ice flowers exploded on the rooftop at the same time, raising smoke and dust all over the sky, followed by several miserable howls. Obviously, the repeated attacks by Wang Mingyang and the others just now caused a lot of damage to these mutated creatures. The 4 people landed one after another and ran towards the northeast without looking back. The ancient lotus seeds have been obtained, and it's only this idiot who is fighting to the death with you. A giant black-skinned rat jumped out of the rooftop with dark red flames all over its body, and crashed to the ground. Ignoring the blood spurting from his shoulders, he shook off the 2 steel spears stuck in his body and quickly chased Wang Mingyang and the others. The evil black tiger jumped down from the rooftop with a body covered in frost and a faint black wind emerging around it. Half of the scalp was missing from the top of his head, blood was pouring out, and there were scars mixed with ice and snow all over his body. He turned his head and pulled out the steel spear stuck in his waist and abdomen. The evil black tiger's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and he clenched his teeth without any intention of retreating. On the rooftop, one of the wind-type giant dog's front legs has detached from its body, and the thunder and lightning cat is also missing one of its front paws. As for the second-level hunter, half of its body was cut off. These 3 mutated creatures have lost the possibility of pursuing Wang Mingyang and the others. But he still didn't leave. A dog and a cat vaguely surrounded this special second-level hunter in the middle. The next moment, a wind blade and lightning struck at the hunter at the same time. As second-level creatures, a dog and a cat instantly killed this half-disabled hunter. The sound of Ruan Ren's biting sounds sounded, and after a while, 2 figures jumped out from both ends of the rooftop at the same time. Upstairs in the laboratory, Gong Zhan watched in stunned silence as Wang Mingyang and the others walked away, with the giant rat and black tiger following them and escaping one after another. Even the 3 oppressive mutated creatures above his head gradually became silent. Gong Zhan then cautiously gestured to Gu Lai and Gao Yang. "Captain, what should I do? It seems that Wang Mingyang has taken away those lotus seeds." Gao Yang crouched down next to Gong Zhan and said helplessly, "Is there nothing left?" Gong Zhan frowned. Just now, Gao Yang used his superpower to break off a piece of the ceiling at the bottom of the pond, causing the entire center of the pond to fall down. Now there is water everywhere in the room, and it is pitch black but without the luster of lotus seeds at all. It shouldn't be. Can I go check it out again? Let's go together. Gong Zhan had no choice but to return to the house immediately. A headlight came on, and Gong Zhan squatted down to lower the light. There are still many first-order mutant creatures outside at the moment, and most of the second-order ones are dead on the roof. After rummaging for a while, Gong Zhan lifted the last cement board in disappointment. But he was surprised to find that a section of lotus root appeared under the cement board. It was purple but without any luster. This is? Gu Lai and Gao Yang were stunned and immediately gathered around. I don't know, but it should be a good thing. Take it back and give it to the professors to study. Gong Zhan chuckled and didn't mind that the lotus root was still stained with a lot of mud. He picked it up, wiped it a few times, and stuffed it directly into his tactical backpack. What should we do next? Shall we go back to the first floor? Now there are basically no second-order mutated creatures outside, and the ground is full of half-broken first-order mutated creatures. What do you think we should do at this time? Gong Zhan glanced around the room to confirm that nothing was missing, and then he chuckled. This collects crystal nuclei? Gao Yang and Gu Lai's eyes lit up and they said at the same time, Hey, my enemy! Go downstairs and call the soldiers out. It's better to use bullets to deal with these things. Gong Zhan patted the two of them on the shoulders, immediately stood up and walked out. Boss Wang, running away like this is not an option. While running rapidly, Liu Chan looked back and quickly opened his mouth and shouted. The mutant rat king behind him has already chased him 50 meters away. If he keeps running like this, even if the four of them continue to use their special powers to block it, they will still be caught up. In addition, the evil black tiger transformed from the scar-faced man also swept in on the black wind. Crush out of the north gate, get to the street, and kill them again. Wang Mingyang whispered. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue's advancement was interrupted just now due to desperation. The evil black tiger has been promoted to the second level, and it is no problem to challenge Liu Chan alone. In the early stage, mental power was at a disadvantage when faced with this transformation system, and its power level was not at the same level. What's more, that black tiger also has mutated wind abilities, and even the space cuts he couldn't make were avoided. He is a master. Wang Mingyang took the time to look back and saw that the mutant rat king, which was larger and faster, had probably been promoted to the third level. I'm not afraid of fighting him alone, but the safety of Su Yu and the others is not guaranteed. There are a lot of metals on the street, so my abilities can be used to their fullest. You guys will try your best to protect yourself in a while. I'll kill this big rat first. Wang Mingyang quickly talked about his plan and gave Liu Chan some important instructions. The three of them nodded quickly and ran towards the street faster. The four of them fought and retreated, and soon rushed out of the north gate and reached the main street. The streets were full of abandoned vehicles. Wang Mingyang stopped and turned around quickly. Each person has a lotus seed, swallow it first. Wang Mingyang opened the mustard seed space channel directly into his mouth, and a lotus seed with dazzling luster quickly flew out and rolled directly into his stomach. When Liu Chan heard this, he immediately stuffed one lotus seed into his hand and threw it into his mouth at the same time. The four of them are like pigs eating ginseng fruit. At this moment, there is no time to appreciate the taste of this magical lotus seed. The mutant rat king and the evil black tiger were speeding towards each other, with a little bit of fluorescence on their bodies. Seeing Su Yu and the others swallowing the lotus seeds, they immediately let out angry roars. Wang Mingyang snorted coldly, opened his hands wide, and the lotus seeds suddenly turned into a majestic energy in his stomach, and a feeling of swelling that was not vomiting or unpleasant still arose. His hands suddenly closed, and the fences, doors, windows, and vehicles in a radius of 50 meters above the street floated into the air at the same time. The next moment, these metal objects smashed into the mutant rat king and evil black tiger that were rushing towards them. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue were immediately promoted to second-level superpowers under the impact of this energy, and the energy in their bodies was still rising. A dark flame blade and a dark blue ice blade came out from the hands of the two women and struck at the same time. Liu Chan's eyes bloomed with 2 points of starlight, and Tai's spiritual thoughts burst out. 2 invisible spiritual powers condensed into spikes, ready to pierce into the minds of the mutant rat king and the evil black tiger at any time. The 4 people's resolute combined attacks made the mutant rat king's eyes bright red, with a hint of fear. The spikes like steel needles on its body suddenly curled up, wrapping its entire body and slamming into those metal objects and Mu Ningxua's dark blue ice blade. The evil black tiger is more flexible, leaving a black wind sweeping in place, but its body moves sideways to the right like lightning. Humph! So what if you're at level 3, I'll blow you up to death! Dozens of small fireballs appeared in front of Wang Mingyang again, shooting at the mutant Rat King intensively. The mutant Rat King carried over the dense metal objects and dark blue ice blades, but was faced with dense small fireballs. His body suddenly flashed, and he swept away at high speed. Unfortunately, these fireballs have built-in tracking capabilities and turn around at the same time. Liu Chan's mental spikes penetrated into the mutant Rat King's mind at the right time. The Rat King was caught off guard, and his body suddenly froze, and dozens of small fireballs were all attached to the Rat King's body. Burst! Wang Mingyang shouted softly, and dozens of small fireballs exploded at the same time, and the sky was filled with flames that immediately engulfed the Rat King. Squeak! The Rat King screamed in pain. Although the level of the small fireballs was low, they couldn't handle the large number of them. So many small fireballs exploding at the same time were no less than being hit head-on by a cannonball. The evil black tiger on the other side kept shooting out black wind blades with its 4 claws flying, but Mu Ningxue kept blocking it with ice walls. The mental spike pierced into his mind, and the evil black tiger let out a cry of pain, and his body suddenly froze, and Su Yu's dark flame sword struck him at the right time. An explosion roared, and in the sky filled with flames and smoke, the evil black tiger's body flew out upside down. A huge wound was exposed on the waist, with dark red flames burning on it, and dark red energy was constantly invading the surrounding flesh and blood. Boss! What's wrong with you? Before Su Yu could strike again, thorns suddenly appeared from the ground and pierced directly towards the 3 of them. At the same time, a huge brown bear suddenly jumped from the rooftop of the street and hit the evil black tiger hard. Let's go! The evil black tiger was seriously injured at this time. His eyes were extremely cold, but he let out a low roar, and the black wind emerged, and he galloped towards the other side of the street. The brown bear turned his head and glanced at the battlefield, hesitated for a moment, and immediately followed. As the black tiger retreated, the situation suddenly turned into a 4-on-1 situation. Originally, the mutated Rat King had not paid much attention to Su Yu and the others. The only one who made him feel dangerous was Wang Mingyang. But there are so many spiritual things, lotus seeds, that it can't stop. Unexpectedly, the evil black tiger that was originally threatened by it was defeated by the 3 of them. The flexible eyes of the mutant Rat King suddenly started to rotate, and his figure became more and more erratic. Ha ha! You 3 helped me keep an eye on it. I won't let it escape this time. Wang Mingyang laughed, and the ink shadow suddenly appeared in his hand. He no longer chose long-range attacks. He flashed and started close combat directly. Squeak! The Rat King screamed, and rustling sounds came from all around, as mutant rats kept appearing nearby. But Wang Mingyang no longer cared. With the fighting power of Su Yu and the others at this moment, they were not afraid of these rats at all. Today, he must kill this smelly rat. He wants the 3rd-order crystal core. But what I want to do even more is to strangle this future Rat King in the cradle with my own hands. The sharp horizontal knife kept colliding with the Rat King's claws, sparks bursting out. Steel spears made of metal condensed around them continued to shoot out. The kinetic energy carried by these steel spears also made the mutant Rat King afraid to catch it with his body. As the battle became more and more intense, Wang Mingyang gave full play to the physical increase brought by sea-level speed and sea-level muscle strengthening, and every slash was powerful. As a chain suddenly rolled up from the ground and wrapped directly around the Rat King's limbs, the Rat King fell to the ground. The nearby metal quickly turned into a large net, tightly restraining the Rat King. Wang Mingyang jumped up, raised the horizontal sword with both hands, and slashed Huashan Mountain suddenly with one move. At this critical moment, the Mouse King suddenly showed a hint of triumphant ridicule in his eyes. Whoosh whoosh! black hair like steel needles all over his body suddenly exploded and shot towards Wang Mingyang at the same time. "Skinny baby!" Wang Mingyang shouted loudly, and a metal hemisphere appeared in front of him. Liu Chan, who had already prepared his cover, had stars looming in his eyes, and a spherical telepathy shield appeared around Wang Mingyang like lightning. The steel hairs passed through the metal hemisphere and penetrated deeply into Liu Chan's telepathy shield. Unfortunately, the momentum has been exhausted and there is no way to break through. Wang Mingyang landed firmly, threw aside the metal hemisphere covered with steel bristles, and slowly walked to the Rat King. "Do you really think I'm going to fight you with a knife to the end? You have been guarding against me using this method. Unfortunately, I can still kill you without using this method." The faint spatial fluctuations dispersed, and a black line appeared on Wang Mingyang's fingertips. He squatted down and patted the giant rat's cheek with a horizontal knife. Squeak, squeak! The Rat King was furious, but there was fear in his eyes. "Okay, stop scolding me. I already know all about your hair removal technique. If I weren't afraid that you might accidentally injure someone else if you put it around, I wouldn't go to such great lengths to fight with you. Although you have some IQ, it's really not that much." After complaining about the Rat King's IQ, Wang Mingyang flicked his finger, and the black line slowly approached the Rat King. "Last time, space cutting failed to kill you. This time I will use it to give you a ride." Ignoring the angry and desperate screams of the Rat King, the black line cut it from beginning to end step by step. The Rat King's screams suddenly stopped, and his body slowly collapsed to both sides, with blood mixed with internal organs scattered all over the floor. The mutant Rat King who will be arrogant in the future and command an army of thousands of mutant rats will die early. Wang Mingyang cut open its head with a horizontal knife and rummaged inside for a while. His eyes lit up. The tip of the knife picked out a crystal core the size of a 1 yuan coin, which exuded a light golden luster. "It's really a gold-based crystal core." During the battle with the Rat King, Wang Mingyang discovered that the steel hair and skin of this rat were unusually hard, even worse than those of the second-level bronze-armored corpses. Sure enough, this third-order mutant Rat King gave birth to a gold-based crystal nucleus. "Brother Mingyang, what should we do next?" "Leave here first, go back to your home, and then I will tell you the next plan." Wang Mingyang stood up and put away the gold crystal core. Su Yu and the three of them all had many questions, but this was not the time to explain. After identifying the direction, Wang Mingyang took a look at everyone and found helplessly that all four of them had the fluorescence of floating light balls. Apparently, when he was escaping from the experimental building, he was caught by those floating light balls. After pondering for a moment, Wang Mingyang simply released 2 floating light balls, which floated in front of the 4 people and illuminated the road. After the war ended, many zombies slowly appeared around. Low-level mutant rats squatted around in the distance, with little fluorescent lights appearing on their bodies, but they never dared to step forward. Sensing the corpse of the third-level mutant Rat King, many mutant rats were both afraid and greedy. "Let's go!" Wang Mingyang smiled contemptuously, turned around and ran towards Su Yu's house. The 3 people followed closely and were promoted again. Their physical fitness was far beyond that of ordinary people, and they ran very fast. As the 4 people left, a group of mutated rats stepped forward tremblingly. After confirming that the killing gods were not there, the 2 second-level mutant rats rushed forward, biting the corpse of the mutant Rat King crazily. After a while, the corpse of the mutated Rat King was covered with various first- and second-order mutant rats. The zombies that smelled fresh blood in the distance also roared and rushed over. A battle between mutant rats and zombies suddenly started. As the battle between the laboratory building and the north gate came to an end, dull gunfire continued in the small square of the laboratory building. The zombies and mutated beasts that have lost their high-end combat power are no match for Gong Zhan and the others. On the campus of Yunnan University, survivors hiding in every corner have awakened their special abilities. As a contemporary college student, I have never eaten pork, but I have also seen pigs running away. I have more or less seen some movies, TV series or novels about apocalypse and urban supernatural beings. When you and the people around you change, there will always be a feeling of bursting with self-confidence. I was eager to go out and test how powerful my powers were. It's a pity that there are always only a few people who can awaken abilities above B level. In a classroom, Ding Qing stood by the window and observed. Behind him, only Lu Ming and Zhang Yan were following him. Li Haoyan and Lu Mei didn't know whether they stayed in the small supermarket or were bitten to death by zombies. He has no awakened powers, his physical fitness is not strong enough, and he is extremely afraid of zombies. Death may also be a kind of relief. At this moment, Ding Cheng's eyes were filled with a hint of indifference and sadness. In just a few days, this college student with a strong sense of justice finally felt the helplessness of leading a group of morons in the apocalypse. Ding Cheng, are we still squatting here? The beam of light has disappeared, Lu Ming said in a deep voice while holding a long knife, which was stained with blood. This thoughtful boy finally chose to fight with Ding Qing. Yeah, there are a lot less zombies outside, they all seem to be attracted over there. Zhang Yan, who was pale, was also holding a long knife, her petite body still trembling slightly. After resting for a long time, how is your energy recovery? Ding Qing turned around and asked calmly. Lu Ming and Zhang Yan had experienced 2 battles, plus the spiritual energy burst, and they were both lucky enough to awaken their powers. It has been restored. They both nodded at the same time. Okay. Let's go over there and take a look now. Ding Qing nodded and pointed in the direction of the laboratory building. Go there. Lu Ming and Zhang Yan were startled at the same time and said in surprise. That's right, go there. There are crystal nuclei in the zombie's head, you've seen it too, right? Ding Qing took out a translucent crystal core that had absorbed most of it from his pocket, and said calmly. The fighting over there is so fierce, there must be a lot of zombies gathering. Let's go to the outside and take a look. Maybe we can find more crystal nuclei. The 3 of them fought all the way, and even joined forces to kill a first-level bronze-armored corpse, and found the crystal core from the bronze-armored corpse's head. As a contemporary college student, there is really too much information available on the internet. Okay, let's go to the outside and take a look. If it's too dangerous, we'll evacuate immediately. Lu Ming and Zhang Yan looked at each other, thought for a while, and then agreed to the plan. I will take the lead, Lu Ming, you should pay attention to the back, and Zhang Yan will support you in the middle. Ding Cheng nodded, silver gray appeared on his skin. At this moment, he was already a level 1 or above superpower, and his steel skin was even more powerful. Lu Ming and Zhang Yan nodded at the same time. Lu Ming's figure suddenly swelled up, and the loose clothes he had specially found were tightened. Green light appeared in Zhang Yan's hand, and a vine emerged from the palm and wrapped around her arm. Set off! Ding Qing waved his hand, opened the window, and climbed out. Ding Qing and the other 3 moved forward along the corner of the wall. The clouds dispersed, and the moonlight shone again. Ding Qing could vaguely see some figures, and it was clear that those were zombies. Ding Qing then made a few gestures, tied his clothes around his waist, grasped 2 bone-cutting knives, and walked forward with his waist bent. 2 sword lights flashed, splitting the heads of 2 zombies. The sound of the corpses falling to the ground attracted other zombies. The 2 vines in Zhang Yan's hand quickly grew longer, firmly binding the legs and feet of the zombies rushing forward. Ding Qing rushed forward fiercely, slashing repeatedly with the bone-cutting knife in his hand, and the zombies who stumbled had their heads cut off. 2 zombies bypassed Ding Qing and rushed over. Lu Ming let out a low shout, his arm muscles stiffened, and he stabbed continuously with the long knife. The huge force directly penetrated the zombie's head. Lu Ming's superpower should be some kind of giant-like ability. His clothes didn't explode, but his arms were obviously twice as big. The 3 of them cooperated more and more tacitly, and soon they killed more than 20 zombies in this small area. Ding Qing casually tore off a piece of clothing from the zombie and simply wiped the blood stains on his body. Waving their hands, the 3 of them moved forward again. Soon, they passed by the hillside of the complex, where there were still many zombie corpses. Ding Qing frowned and glanced down the mountain. Unfortunately, even with the dim moonlight, he couldn't see clearly what was happening in the distance. He whispered to Lu Ming and Zhang Yan to continue moving forward, and Ding Qing took the lead to walk down the slope. At this time, the three of them had accumulated a lot of supplies from the small supermarket in the teacher's dormitory building. There is no need to find food for the time being. Improving your strength is the most important thing. Ding Qing has already tried the function of crystal nuclei, and the effect is very obvious. It can enhance and restore his own energy. Walking quietly through the dormitory area, the three of them were surprised to find that there were not many zombies outside this area. There were quite a few corpses, and there were many zombies roaring in the dormitory upstairs. Apparently they're not the only group of survivors out there hunting zombies. They were very familiar with the terrain of Yunnan University, and they followed the small woods with ease. When the faint sound of gunfire came, Ding Qing and the other two people were refreshed and immediately quickened their pace. After passing through the woods and reaching a slope, Ding Qing suddenly discovered that there seemed to be many figures ahead. Immediately making a gesture, Lu Ming and Zhang Yan bent down at the same time. "There's a figure in front of me. I don't know if it's a zombie." Ding Qing squatted under the tree and frowned. "Probably not. Look at them, they are motionless. They are clearly attracted by the sound of gunfire. If they are zombies, how could they be indifferent?" Lu Ming looked forward for a while and said with some certainty. "Then, come up and take a look, maybe it's a classmate." Ding Qing thought for a moment, and realized that what Lu Ming said did make sense. The three of them looked at each other, nodded at the same time, and Ding Qing walked forward again. "Who?" Zhang Yan kicked something under her feet and made a soft sound. Someone suddenly made a sound in front of him, and a flashlight light immediately came over. "Classmate, don't be nervous, we are alive!" Ding Qing stood up helplessly, and his plan to quietly step forward went bankrupt. However, this also allowed them to confirm that there were indeed survivors in front of them. "Come here slowly." The person in front seemed to feel that his voice was a bit loud, and immediately lowered his voice and shouted, "Okay. Put the flashlight away first so as not to attract zombies." Ding Qing nodded immediately, and led Lu Ming and Zhang Yan forward. The lights disappeared, and when the three of them approached, Ding Qing discovered that there were actually many people in the woods on this hillside. But the strange thing is that these people are obviously divided into three small groups. A team of 10 or so boys, and a team of 5 or 6 girls. One is a small group composed of teachers. The three teams are clearly separated from each other, about 10 meters apart, and are distributed in the woods at both ends of the passage. It was the boys' team who asked. Seeing Ding Qing and the others approaching, the boys at the back quickly spread to the sides, revealing the two boys in front. "Are you guys?" A boy with an obvious burning aura on his body seemed to be the leader of the team. "Hello, classmates, we are from the School of Business Administration, my name is Ding Qing." "You are?" Ding Qing took a step forward and stretched out his hand to the boy. "Hello, we are from the School of Life Sciences. My name is Tianlei." Tianlei looked calmer and reached out to hold Ding Qing's hand. "Are there just 3 of you?" Tianlei glanced at the 3 of them and continued to ask. "Well, it's just the 3 of us, and everyone together is almost dead." "Alas." Ding Qing looked bitter and said sadly. "It's all the same. In our dormitory building, these are the only people left to die." Tianlei sighed slightly. Everyone's situation was similar. "You stopped here because you saw the experimental building below. There were soldiers there, which attracted the surrounding zombies and killed them too quickly." Tianlei pointed to the small square of the experimental building below. There were dozens of floating light balls floating around the square. Wang Mingyang's light balls lasted for at least an hour, and were not extinguished at this moment. Gong Zhan and others used these light balls to fight, and the hit rate of their firearms increased a lot. Ding Qing looked down. His pupils suddenly widened, and all he could see were corpses, at least tens of thousands of them. Lu Ming and Zhang Yan were stunned. If it weren't for the limited lighting range of the floating light ball, they wouldn't have been able to see many corpses clearly. Otherwise, even if they experienced the bloody scene of fighting zombies, the 3 of them would definitely vomit. "You should have awakened your powers too." Tianlei looked at the 3 of them. Ding Cheng's body was covered in blood, but no scars could be seen. Lu Ming's obviously enlarged body and the vines wrapped around Zhang Yan's arms. All these signs made Tianlei understand that if these three people could come over, they must have something to rely on. Well, the three of us have all awakened our powers. Ding Qing did not hide anything and admitted openly. That's good. We have 13 people here, 9 of whom have awakened their powers. There are 6 girls from the School of Economics over there. There are 4 teachers from the Academic Affairs Office on the other side. Do you choose one party to join, or do you act alone? Tianlei pointed to the other 2 small groups and said lightly. Oh? Do you have any explanation? Ding Qing was stunned for a moment, and then said doubtfully. Zombies and mutated creatures have crystal nuclei in their brains. Do you know this? Tianlei smiled slightly and asked with an inexplicable expression. Well, I know this. Ding Cheng nodded. There is nothing to hide. Anyone who dares to kill zombies is not stupid. Who hasn't read a few apocalyptic novels? It's very simple. There are still many zombie corpses on the hillside. Once the soldiers cease fire, we will prepare to go down and search. If you choose to join, then we will distribute it fairly. If you choose to join other teams or work alone, then if there is a conflict, don't blame us for having more people and bullying others. Tianlei's tone was calm. After killing so many zombies, the students living in the ivory tower gradually began to become predatory. Ding Qing couldn't help but hesitate when he heard this, and looked at Lu Ming and Zhang Yan. They nodded at him, obviously taking him as the leader. We choose to join. Ding Qing pondered for a moment, and said calmly. It is obviously much better to join Tianlei and the others. There are at least 9 awakened people. This strength should not be underestimated. It doesn't make much sense to do it alone. It's indeed a bit too lonely for 3 people to do it. When Tianlei heard this, he smiled and quickly introduced each other's names. At the same time, he also understood each other's special abilities. Although he hadn't realized that Ding Cheng's power level was higher than his, the defensive power brought by his steel skin made Tianlei's eyes brighten. With the addition of Ding Qing and the others, Tianlei instantly felt that a large part of his team's shortcomings had been filled. In addition to the 7 people who survived at the beginning, 6 more people joined the boys' dormitory building. Among them, 2 ordinary classmates among the 7, and 2 of the 6 who joined later, all awakened their powers. The entire team, including Tianlei and the other 3, now has a total of 12 superpowers. Seeing this situation, Tianlei's confidence increased greatly. After thinking for a moment, he turned and walked towards the 6 girls not far away. Tianlei was seen making gestures in front of the 6 girls, and then pointed at his team. A few minutes later, the 6 girls actually came with him. This time, a total of 22 students gathered together. But when Tianlei wanted to walk towards the teachers on the other side of the road again, he was stopped by Lin Lu, the leader of the girls. Tianlei, if you want to find those teachers, we will withdraw. Lin Lu, who had short hair, said with determination. Why is that? Tianlei was stunned, and looked at Zhou Wenguang a little strangely. Across the way is Director Hong from the Academic Affairs Office. You should know some rumors. Lin Lian showed disdain, with indescribable disgust in his tone. Holy crap! Is it that scumbag? Tianlei was shocked, and when the boys around him heard this, they also started talking in low voices. Ding Cheng frowned. He knew something about Director Hong. He was not a good guy. It is said that all the more beautiful students in the college were called to the Academic Affairs Office under various names by him for education. This damn thing, it turns out it's him. I didn't expect it. I just heard about it before. I didn't expect him to be such a bald man. This is the end of the world. Find an opportunity to fuck him. What are you doing? Just break the legs and throw them to the zombies. All the boys were whispering, expressing their disgust for Director Hong. Okay, what I didn't say is, if it's this guy, I won't care if he's beaten to death. Tianlei is a bachelor. It is unreasonable for such a guy to survive. Well, be careful. Anyone who can be around this guy is definitely not a good person. Lin Lu nodded and said with a look of disgust. Yes, let's go over there and try to stay away from them. Tianlei asked everyone to move a few dozen meters to the left, and everyone squatted in the woods and looked out. Tianlei, there are so many people in the school, it's impossible that only about 20 of us are alive, right? Dingqing squatted beside Tianlei and said a little strangely. It's definitely more than that, but there's one thing you probably didn't expect. Oh? The zombie outbreak occurred at noon last Saturday. In a school that usually has tens of thousands of people, it is estimated that only 10,000 or 20,000 people were present, and most of them went out. But even so, it shouldn't be just that. That's for sure. We have searched 2 male dormitories, and there are dozens of people alive inside. Unfortunately, we are the only ones who dare to come out and fight. Dingqing. Lin Lu interjected from the side. In our girls' dormitory building, there are more than a dozen girls alive on our 4th floor alone, but in the whole building, there are only 6 of us who dare to come out. It's pretty good. You are girls, and there are still 6 more people who can come out. We have a building with more than 20 boys. At the beginning, there were only 9 people, 5 of whom were awakened ones. Tianlei said with a bitter smile. The zombies in our building were all set on fire. Otherwise, it would be difficult for us to survive. Lin looked bitter, thinking of the 4 strong men. Tianlei shook his head slightly and said, Don't belittle yourself. The zombies in our building were lured away. Otherwise, the zombies in the corridor alone would have blocked us, and we would not be able to unite together. Oh? Could it be the sound of metal that night? Dingqing looked strange. Tianlei was stunned for a moment, nodded, and said, That's it. There are 4 powerful big brothers and sisters who caused the disturbance. 2 men and 2 women? Lin Lu said in surprise. Yes. How do you know? Tianlei scratched his head, a little strange. One of the men can control metal, right? Dingqing said with a bitter smile. Have you met them too? Tianlei was really shocked. Dingqing nodded. Maybe I should be the first one of us to encounter them. Dingqing then told the story of how he met Wang Mingyang and the others, but when he met them, there were only 3 of them. So that's it. They should have come from your teaching building first, then to our girls' dormitory, and then asked for the specific location before going to the boys' dormitory of your College of Life Sciences. Lin Lu suddenly realized. No matter what, Dingqing, don't hold grudge against that big brother. He is right. In the end of the world, we can only rely on ourselves. After sorting out the whole story, Tianlei pondered for a while, then patted Dingqing on the shoulder and said lightly, I know, I experienced some things later, and I understand it. Dingqing nodded, showing a bitter smile. I estimate that the green light soaring into the sky may have been caused by the 4 of them. Lin Lu guessed. Tianlei and Dingqing looked at each other, nodded and laughed at the same time. The dull sound of gunfire gradually disappeared in the small square. Only Gong Zhan was still wearing a golden halo, holding 2 sabers and wreaking havoc among the corpses. After a while, even those floating balls of light dissipated, and Gong Zhan stopped panting. All the surrounding zombies have been killed, and the mutant beasts are dying and running away. Apart from Gong Zhan, there are no other standing creatures in the field. Captain, please take a break. Gao Yan walked to Gong Zhan with a kettle and handed the kettle over. Gong Zhan took the kettle, raised his head and took a big sip. There are survivors on the hillside, please be careful. Returning the kettle to Gao Yang, Gong Zhan frowned. What should we do? Should we take them away? Gao Yang frowned and said that the order from his superiors was only to rescue Professor Gu. They could still take the initiative to rescue a few other survivors, but if there were too many, it would be difficult to handle. Let's see what they want to do. People who dare to come out at this time are not ordinary people. Gong Zhan chuckled, bent down and split open the head of a first-order mutated dog next to him, and took out a translucent crystal core. On the hillside, Tianlei waved his hand, and the others followed him and walked slowly down. Upon seeing this, Director Hong immediately moved away with Xiao Lu and others. Everyone found zombies lying on the ground along the way, and some people opened their heads and dug out a gray-white crystal core from time to time. Only then did Ding Qing and Lin Lu realize that ordinary zombies might also produce crystal nuclei. But the probability is relatively low. About 6 or 7 ordinary zombies will have a crystal core like this. Director Hong and the 4 others also noticed the actions of these students, but apart from Xiao Lu, there were also 2 female teachers, Zhou Yan and Zhang Ting, who were a little reluctant to take action. Neither Xiao Lu nor Director Hong took action. He wanted to get in touch with those soldiers, and maybe he could follow them out of here. In a sense, the crystal nuclei in these zombie bodies are the trophies of those soldiers. As smooth adults, Director Hong and Xiao Lu obviously think more. Tian Lei and his party searched for the crystal core all the way and fell behind. However, Director Hong and the others quickly approached Gong Zhan and the others, and the soldiers cleaning the battlefield ignored them at all. The vigilant soldiers on the side raised their guns and pointed them at several people. "Comrade, don't shoot! We are alive!" Director Hong raised his hands and walked forward with a smile. "Stop! Don't come any further!" A soldier shouted coldly, unmoved at all. Upon hearing this, Gong Zhan frowned and stepped forward, saluted with a military salute, and then waved his hand to let the vigilant soldiers disperse. "Who are you?" "Comrade, we are teachers from Yunnan University. You have a cigarette." Director Hong put down his hand, and under Gong Zhan's guarded eyes, he slowly took out a cigarette and lighter from his pocket, with a smile on his face. "I'm sorry, I have a mission, so I don't smoke." Gong Zhan waved his hand and refused. "Oh, okay." Director Hong quickly put the cigarette and lighter back, stepped forward and stretched out his hands to hold Gong Zhan. "Finally, I've been waiting for you, now I'm saved. I'm really sorry, we are too busy and cannot free up manpower for rescue at the moment." Gong Zhan took a step back, let go of Director Kai Hong's fat hand, and explained calmly. Don't you have a helicopter? It's just the 4 of us, we can definitely take it away." Director Hong looked surprised and continued to say with a smile. Yes. It's so scary here. There are zombies everywhere. We finally got you here, but you can't leave us alone." Zhou Yan twisted her body and said coquettishly. "That's right, I've seen the plane go back and forth several times. It must be our turn to save us. We are the people's teachers." Zhang Ting wrinkled her nose, spoke in a cute voice, and winked at Gong Zhan. "I'm really sorry, we need to get orders from our superiors before we can take action. But it's probably close. The area is safe for the time being. You can stay here and wait for rescue." Gong Zhan looked calm and unmoved. "Can I ask how soon it will take for you to launch rescue?" Xiao Lu looked at the soldiers in the small square, frowned and thought for a while, then raised his head and asked. "The specific time is unclear, but the head of the headquarters has established a temporary shelter, and it is expected that operations will begin soon." Gong Zhan pretended to think for a moment, and replied. In fact, he didn't know the specific thoughts of the leaders. At this time, Tian Lei also came over with Sui Wenguang, Ding Qing and Lin Lu, and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when he heard this. "Leader, can we collect these crystal nuclei?" Ding Qing hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. "Well..." Gong Zhan had a headache and was a little reluctant to give up, but looking at those immature students, he couldn't help but nod. "You can collect the crystal nuclei below the 2nd level without turning them in." "Thank you, leader!" Ding Qing and the 4 of them looked at each other, and thanked Gong Zhan at the same time. When they were seeking self-rescue, they no longer had much hope for military rescue. What's more, Gong Zhan has been evading it. Obviously, the army has no plans in this regard for the time being. As a college student, I have overcome my own fear and become more pragmatic. Seeing the 4 college students turning around and leaving, Gong Zhan opened his lips, but still didn't say anything. After the 4 of them walked more than 10 meters away, Gong Zhan finally opened his mouth. "We have 2 heavy machine guns. Early tomorrow morning, I will lure all the nearby zombies over and clean them up." After everyone heard this, their eyes suddenly showed excitement, and they turned their heads and waved to Gong Zhan. "Okay, we'll come over early tomorrow morning to help." Protect yourself and survive! Gong Zhan waved his hand, turned to look at the other 4 teachers, and his expression suddenly returned to normal. You heard it too, find a place to hide and come over early tomorrow morning. Director Hong and the 4 of them looked at each other and wanted to fight for it again, but Gong Zhan ignored them and turned to leave. Xiao Lu clenched his fists, snorted coldly, and turned around to look for the zombie crystal core. It took a full 2 hours to clean the battlefield, and many mutated creatures came over smelling the smell of blood. But basically all the nearby first and second level creatures were dead here, and a few first level creatures were killed by more than a dozen soldiers using night vision goggles on their tactical helmets. It wasn't until there was no more intact head in the field that Tian Lei led a group of students back to the dormitory building. Director Hong and the 4 of them took 40 or 50 crystal nuclei and directly found a laboratory to live in. They made up their minds to wait for these soldiers to leave tomorrow and fight for it again. This night, everyone gained a lot. Gong Zhan looked at the hundreds of crystal nuclei piled up on the experimental table and the purple lotus root with a smile. However, he still arranged for Gao Yang and another warrior who had awakened the fire power to set a fire directly in the square and burn as many corpses as possible. Tian Lei brought Ding Qing and Lin Lu to his dormitory. Together with Su Wenguang and Yao Ji, he spread 200 to 300 first-order and below crystal nuclei on the bed and began to distribute the spoils. In Su Yu's home in the village housing area of the city, 4 people lay on the sofa panting heavily, not even bothering to clean up the blood stained on their bodies. This night of fighting and running had severely exhausted the physical strength of several people. Wang Mingyang struggled to get up, blocked the doors and windows tightly with metal, and with a wave of his hand, a floating light ball bloomed in the middle of the living room. Liu Yuchan threw his backpack on the coffee table, opened the zipper, and poured out a large amount of crystal nuclei. He dug into his pocket again and placed 3 lotus seeds on the crystal core. Wang Mingyang pulled out a depression from the crystal core pile, raised his palm, and 20 lotus seeds rolled down out of thin air. Okay, these are our spoils tonight. Wang Mingyang breathed a long sigh of relief and sat down on the sofa. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue also struggled to get up and looked at the things on the coffee table with burning eyes. I said, Boss Wang, should you explain to us how many kinds of superpowers you have? Liu Yuchan tilted his head and looked sideways at Wang Mingyang with an annoyed look on his face. When Su Yu and Mu Ningxue heard this, they also raised their heads and stared at Wang Mingyang closely. Haha, not too many, maybe 4 or 5. Wang Mingyang scratched his head with a silly smile on his face. Well, it's really not much. I will strangle you to death, and I won't let you have much. Liu Yuchan jumped directly onto Wang Mingyang, reaching out to strangle his neck. Ahem, okay, I'm not trying to hide it. The point is, you didn't even ask. Wang Mingyang coughed a few times, gently pushed Liu Yuchan away, sat up and smiled. You said before that you have space cutting and metal control, right? But what did we see tonight? Exploding fireballs, palms that can hold things, and what little tricks to make Su Yu's explosion outrageous. That's right, there's also this ball of light. It's so damn bright when you shine it on your body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 types. What are these? Liu Yuchan transformed into a chatterbox, pointed at the floating ball of light above his head, and kept complaining. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue looked at each other in confusion after hearing this. Wang Mingyang had a dark look on his face. If I let you know, there are still 3 C-level and 1 D-level passive ones that have not been shown. There are still many E-levels in the system bookshelf that have not been absorbed. I think you will go crazy. Okay, space cutting is S-level, metal control is a level. Except for this mustard space, the rest are just some unsavory tricks. What's all the fuss about? Wang Mingyang waved his hand and said helplessly. Mustard space? Is this another space power? Liu Yuchan shouted, jumping 3 feet high, and his finger pointing at Wang Mingyang trembled slightly. To put it simply, it's just a storage space. It seems to be Class A, right? Wang Mingyang said nonchalantly, fearing that he might accidentally irritate this brother from his previous life. Liu Yuchan's whole body froze, and he sat down on the sofa slumped, and kept chanting. Supreme Tai, save Ku Tianzuan, accept this evildoer. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue were also a little stunned, but seeing Li Yuchan's funny scene, the two women couldn't help but lower their heads and chuckle. Wang Mingyang had no choice but to slap Li Yuchan on the thigh, and he also laughed. After a whole night of fighting, almost all the methods had been exposed, and Wang Mingyang didn't bother to hide it. He simply shared a few of his tricks with the three of them, causing them to roll their eyes. This mustard space is of great use. I just don't know how big it is exactly. After Wang Mingyang explained the space function of mustard seed, Mu Ningxue's eyes showed a glimmer of light. About 1,000, Wang Mingyang said while checking the mustard space. But suddenly he discovered that the mustard space that was originally only 1,000 cubic meters suddenly became much wider. A rough estimate shows that there is at least nearly 100,000 cubic meters of space now. Increased 100 times. Is it because of my promotion? Wang Mingyang scratched his head and secretly guessed. Approximately how much space is there? Mu Ningxue asked when Wang Mingyang froze midway through his words. 100,000 cubic meters. Wang Mingyang smiled sheepishly. 100,000 cubic meters. Mu Ningxue was startled and began to imagine how big a space 100,000 cubic meters was. If calculated based on the height of 5 meters, this is a huge space of at least 200 meters long and 100 meters wide. This is almost as big as a large supermarket, Mu Ningxue murmured. Wang Mingyang picked up a bottle of mineral water and nodded. That's about right. So next, while improving our strength, we will find a large supermarket in the city and use the mustard space to stock up on some supplies. How much money will you make if you use your ability to move people? Su Yu suddenly sighed. Ahem. Pfft. Wang Mingyang and Li Yuchan were pouring mineral water into their mouths. Su Yu's words immediately choked them. Xiao Yu, you are so good. Lao Wang said that my power can be used to move bricks, but you asked him to move. Together, we can only do hard work. Li Yuchan wiped his lips with a wry smile. No matter how big or small, call me sister. Can you call me Xiao Yu? Su Yu pushed him and said with a sweet smile. Ha ha! Several people looked at each other and laughed at the same time. After experiencing a fierce battle all night, let alone life and death, at least he can be regarded as a reliable comrade in arms. The relationship between the four of them has obviously become much closer, and a tacit understanding has arisen naturally. The energy of the lotus seeds has not been digested yet, so the crystal core does not need to absorb it for the time being. However, each of you should put away one of these lotus seeds first, and feed them to me immediately after digestion. I will put away the others first. We are all tired tonight. Let's have a good rest. We will plan our next move early tomorrow morning. Wang Mingyang saw that everyone was laughing, so he clapped his hands and ended the conversation for the whole night. Beside a street outside the university city, Xinhong threw out the rock spear in his hand and directly nailed the first-order hunter to the wall. Chen Rei's body flashed quickly, and the machete he found in his hand cut off the hunter's head like lightning. He skillfully split the head open and found a translucent crystal core. Chen Rei threw it casually to Chao Jing aside. The water flow rolled up and washed the crystal core clean. Chao Jing then took the crystal core and put it into his backpack. Brother Hong, the green light has disappeared. Wang Mingyang and the others seem to have come from that way. Chen Rei raised his head and glanced in the direction of the village in the city, and said in a cold tone. Well, it should be. It seems that they have gained something, otherwise they wouldn't be so eager to go back. Xinhong nodded, his face calm. Brother Hong, we now have 5 superpowers, do you want to? Yuyani stepped forward with cat steps, hugged Xinhong's arm, and a ball of flame emerged from one palm. They have also awakened their powers, and there is one more person. Gu Siyu on the side said lightly with stars looming in his eyes. So what, there are 5 of us and 4 of them, are we still afraid that we can't beat them? Chao Jing snorted coldly, with a proud look on his face, and the water around his fingertips became thicker than before. The burst of spiritual energy in the early morning made his strength a step further, directly entering the next level, and his self-confidence was overwhelming. Xinghong frowned slightly, pondered for a while, and nodded. Go and take a look. See you and Chao Jing both have the ability to control. Once you take action, you must control the two of them as soon as possible. Okay. I knew you would agree, Brother Hong. Chao Jing laughed and winked at Gu Siyu. Gu Siyu's face was calm, but she was slightly worried in her heart. Their strength has indeed increased a lot, but Wang Mingyang and the others must have benefited from that burst of energy. Who will win is really unpredictable. The 5 people reached a consensus, then quickly climbed to the roof and ran towards the residential area under the moonlight. Late at night, Wang Mingyang, who had always been vigilant, suddenly felt a few soft noises coming from the roof of the building next door, and he immediately turned over and sat up. Li Yuchan, who was laying on the floor in the room, opened his eyes at the same time. The two looked at each other in the darkness, and stood up quietly in tacit understanding. Let's go out and take a look, don't wake them up. Wang Mingyang whispered and put on his clothes lightly. Li Yuchan nodded, activated his mental power, and quietly opened the door. The two of them tiptoed out of the room. Feeling the faint breathing coming from the master bedroom, they smiled slightly and walked out of the house. Quietly walking out of the door, several sharp steel wires appeared around Wang Mingyang. Li Yuchan closed the door again, and the two quickly ran towards the roof. Standing at the stairs of the rooftop, the metal power was activated, and the entire door turned into molten metal silently. Wang Mingyang activated his mental power, and the molten metal immediately shot out. Li Yuchan unfolded his mental shield, and the two of them rushed outward at the same time. Careful! There was a soft shout on the rooftop, and a large piece of rock and soil suddenly stood up, blocking all the molten metal. Dust flew everywhere. Xinghong and the other 5 people suddenly retreated, and a floating ball of light suddenly bloomed above the 5 people's heads. The sudden appearance of light made the 5 people's eyes, accustomed to darkness, involuntarily squint. The smoke dispersed, and a sneer was heard at the same time. Who am I asking? It turns out to be you 5 guys. Wang Mingyang and Li Yuchan stood in front of the stairs, with their hands folded and their faces mocking. Wang Mingyang! Chen Rui rubbed his eyes and saw the person in front of him clearly. He couldn't help but let out a low drink, clenched the machete, and wanted to step forward. Xinghong grabbed him, his eyes narrowed slightly, and his face looked a little ugly. It's me. What's wrong? You guys ran to the roof of our building like mice. Don't tell me that I was passing by. The liquid metal turned into a torrent and flew back, and flying swords condensed out. Wang Mingyang put down his hands, stepped forward, and said coldly, If you don't talk about secret things, Mingren, what was that green light before? What did you get? Chao Jing put his hands behind his back, walked up to Xinghong, and asked in a cold tone. Out of the sight of Wang Mingyang and Wang Mingyang, a stream of water emerged from his hand and meandered vaguely down his thigh. Oh, it's really ridiculous. Why should I tell you? Wang Ming smiled angrily. Are these people mentally ill? The corners of Li Yuchan's mouth twitched slightly. How could the man in front of him have the confidence to ask them questions? What a big tale. Chao Jing's expression froze. He glanced around and saw that there were only 2 people in front of him. 5 against 2, I have the advantage. Chao Jing was overjoyed, and before Xinghong could speak, he suddenly shouted angrily. Do it! The water that had snaked up to his ankles suddenly shot out, like a water snake winding along the floor towards Wang Mingyang. The other 4 people were stunned and quickly reacted. Chen Rui had long wanted to take action against Wang Mingyang. When he got the signal, he immediately dodged his figure, pulled out an afterimage of his body, and slashed at Wang Mingyang with his machete. Xinghong's special power was activated, and the broken cement blocks in the middle of the floor quickly condensed into several sharp spears, which were pierced towards Wang Mingyang and Li Yuchan. Flames emerged from Yani's hands, forming 2 fireballs and throwing them towards the 2 of them. Starlight flashed in Gu Siyu's eyes, and a force of mental restraint immediately wrapped around Wang Mingyang's body. This was not their plan at the beginning, but now only Wang Mingyang and the unknown Li Yuchan were present. The 5 people unanimously chose Wang Mingyang at the same time. Playing with fire with me. I'm looking for death. Faced with the sudden attack, Wang Mingyang was too lazy to move, and more than 20 flying swords pierced Chenrui, who was dodging to one side. 2 magnetic bursting fireballs emerged and shot at Yuyani, forcing her to dodge repeatedly. A layer of telekinesis shield appeared, and Zheng Hong's stone spears exploded into pieces. The fragments flew into the air, but fell to the ground silently. A layer of telekinesis power held the fragments firmly. Before Chao Jing's restraining water chain could wrap around Wang Mingyang's body, it was turned into a puff of water mist by Li Yuchan's telekinesis. 2 explosions were accompanied by a shrill scream, and Zheng Hong was shocked to find that Yuyani had already dodged the 2 fireballs. But for some reason, she was still hit by 2 fireballs, and the intense high temperature instantly roasted Yanni. Only then did Gu Xiu realize to her horror that her mental restraint ability was like a mantis's arm acting as a chariot, unable to restrain Wang Mingyang at all. Psychic binding ability? Not bad, but it's a pity that your strength is too low. Wang Mingyang's eyes drifted towards Gu Xiu with a mocking look on his face. Hey, I'm also a brainiac, let me try. Li Yuchan's eyes lit up. He actually met a person with psychic abilities, and his hands suddenly felt itchy. An invisible spike of concentrated mental power instantly penetrated into Gu Xiu's mind. This delicate woman suddenly started bleeding from the corners of her eyes, let out a miserable howl, grabbed her head with both hands and fell to the ground rolling around. Yanni! See you! I'll fight you! Zheng Hong's eyes were about to burst, and in just a moment, the 2 closest women fell to the ground at the same time. Yuyani will definitely not survive, and Gu Xiu may also be in danger. Large pieces of cement flew up from the rooftop, forming a layer of cement armor on Zheng Hong's body. He held 2 spears tightly in his hands. It's a pity to have a B-level supernatural body made of rock and soil. Wang Mingyang sighed secretly. The B-level superpower was already very good, but it was a pity that Zheng Hong chose to be his enemy. Chenrui on the side had long been chased by more than 20 flying swords and was jumping up and down. Although his speed ability is good, if Wang Mingyang didn't want to keep him at the end, he would have been sieved long ago. Li Yuchan looked at Gu Xiu, who was rolling on the ground, and shook his head in disappointment. He glanced at Chao Jing, who was standing there blankly. Although he didn't know this man, he felt embarrassed if he dared to attack them. Stretching out his big hand, he grasped Chao Jing's neck from afar, and lifted Chao Jing directly with powerful telepathy. Chao Jing raised his head with a face of pain, his hands tightly grasping his neck, but through a layer of air, he kept kicking his feet in the air, and his eyes began to turn white. Bao Bao, do you dare to kill someone? Wang Mingyang glanced at Chao Jing and smiled lightly. You dare, why don't I? Li Yuchan sneered. Supreme Tai saved Ku Tianzuan, and his temper was not very good when facing evil people. Okay, anyway, there are 5 of them, no one will be left alive. Wang Mingyang smiled lightly, but his tone was very cold. A black line appeared in front of him, and the next moment, it directly crossed Zheng Hong's body diagonally. The 2 stone spears were blocked by the mental shield, the smoke dispersed, the light in Zheng Hong's eyes dissipated, half of his body slid down, and blood suddenly spurted out. Li Yuchan squeezed with his big hand, and Chao Jing, who was floating in the air a few meters away, suddenly tilted his neck and made a crisp sound, and his struggling body suddenly collapsed. Seeing that the 3 people were killed in a matter of seconds, Chenrui felt chills all over his body, and his body suddenly flashed and flew away into the distance. That's ridiculous, can you still run? Wang Mingyang sneered, and the space cut appeared again, instantly cutting Chenrui in half from head to toe. The 2 bodies followed the inertia and hit the edge of the rooftop, spraying blood and splitting their internal organs on both sides. What should I do with this girl? Li Yuchan looked at Gu Xiu, who was rolling on the ground, and frowned. What should I do? If you dare to attack us, you will be killed. Wang Mingyang curled his lips and inserted 2 flying swords directly into the foreheads of Gu Siyu and Yuzhani, bringing out a touch of red and white. "Excuse me, please throw these corpses farther away. This is the roof of Suyu's house after all." After settling everything, Wang Mingyang smiled, bent down and extended his hand to Liu Chan in a gesture of invitation. "Damn! You are using me as my messenger to move bricks. I think when you said people in the army would use me like this, you were actually talking about yourself." Liu Chan rolled his eyes speechlessly, but still quickly activated his telekinesis, lifted the bodies of the 5 people, and walked towards the rooftop in the distance. "Hey, don't forget to touch the corpse, maybe there will be a surprise." Wang Mingyang suddenly thought of something and shouted to Liu Chan. Liu Chan made an international gesture to him without looking back. Convex. After a while, Liu Chan returned with a backpack. "Not bad. These people actually collected more than 30 crystal nuclei, including several of the first-order ones." Wang Mingyang grinned and gained a good harvest. Shinrui is indeed a good classmate, he even explodes things after killing people. "Let's go back to bed. I'm so sleepy." Liu Chan yawned and threw his backpack to Wang Mingyang. The 2 of them turned around and went downstairs and returned to the room. The 2 beauties in the master bedroom were still sleeping soundly. Thanks to the iron plates that Wang Mingyang had used to block the doors and windows before, Liu Chan also used his mental power to protect the roof when he was on the rooftop. A fight occurred overhead, but the 2 girls were not woken up. Wang Mingyang closed the door, threw his backpack on the sofa, and tiptoed back to the second bedroom with Liu Chan. The 2 quickly put down their thoughts and fell asleep. The next morning, Suyu and Mu Ningxue slept until noon, then got up. The doors and windows were blocked by iron plates, and even though the sun was shining brightly outside, the house was still dark. Suyu rubbed his sleepy eyes, opened the door, and walked out. He looked around but found no trace of Wang Mingyang and Liu Chan. After listening for a while, there was a faint sound of snoring. "These 2 lazy pigs, hee." Thinking that he had slept until this moment, Suyu couldn't help but blush, covered his red lips and laughed. After stretching a lot, Suyu turned around, took out a bottle of mineral water, walked into the bathroom, quietly closed the door and started to wash up. Ever since they learned that Wang Mingyang had a mustard space with a lot of mineral water hidden in it, Suyu and Mu Ningxue no longer debated whether to waste it. "It's time to wash, it's time to rinse." After a while, Mu Ningxue yawned and walked out, grabbed a bottle of water and went into the bathroom. The 2 women whispered and chuckled from time to time. After the 2 of them finished washing, they returned to the living room. Although they didn't know what was going on outside, looking at the clock hanging on the wall, it was already past 12 noon. Suyu grabbed a large bottle of mineral water and entered the kitchen. Mu Ningxue took out a book and sat on the sofa, but was surprised to find a strange backpack on the sofa. After hesitating for a moment, Mu Ningxue still couldn't hold back her curiosity and grabbed the backpack and opened the zipper. Why are there so many crystal nuclei?" Mu Ningxue's surprised voice attracted Suyu to stick his head out. "Where did the crystal nuclei come from? Aren't they all put away by Brother Mingyang?" "Here, it's in this backpack." Mu Ningxue picked up her backpack and gestured to Suyu. This backpack is not ours," Suyu said in shock. "Did these 2 people go out again while we were asleep?" Mu Ningxue asked doubtfully. "It's very possible, but why not use the previous backpack?" Suyu tilted his head and looked at the 3 backpacks placed beside the sofa. "Could it be that they went out to rob?" The 2 girls were stunned and laughed at the same time. "Let's ask them again when they wake up. I'll cook first." Wang Mingyang and Liu Chan didn't get up until Suyu had finished cooking. After a brief wash, the 4 of them sat around the table, eating and discussing the next action. "The center of Spring City is not suitable as a base. I am going to find a larger place nearby." Wang Mingyang spoke first and introduced the topic. Liu Chan: "For a stronghold, it needs to be easy to defend but difficult to attack, right?" Mu Ningxue: "Easy to defend, hard to attack, hard to find, unless you find an air raid shelter." Suyu: Where can I find a bomb shelter? I know of 2 air raid shelters. There is one at the iron foundry on the outskirts of the city in the west, and there is also one at the foot of Panlong Mountain in the north. It's a pity that there is no infrastructure there, and it has been abandoned for decades. Wang Mingyang recalled it, frowned and said, It's best to find a place with a water source, otherwise it would be a waste to always use mineral water to wash up. Liu Chan smacked his lips and said that although the tap water in this apocalyptic world will not cause mutations, without human control, water and electricity have been cut off everywhere, which is inconvenient. In this case, the Yunhu Villa district is a choice. There are luxury villas there. They are close to Yunhu. The water source is guaranteed and the transportation is convenient. There are many wealthy people living there, with complete facilities and surrounded by protective fences. Mu Ningxue pondered for a moment, and named a place that everyone had heard of. Yunhu Villa area, it's indeed possible. Wang Mingyang thought about the memories in his mind. This place was similar to what he imagined. Sister Shui, isn't your family quite rich? Didn't you buy a villa there? Suyu asked doubtfully. Mu Ningxue shook her head. My dad bought a villa on the edge of Qinghu Lake in Yuhe City. I have been out of the province before. I originally planned to go there the next day when I came back, but I didn't expect to encounter something like this. Yuhe City is only an hour away from Spring City. The water quality of Yunhu Lake next to Spring City is not as good as Qinghu Lake in Yuhe City. Many rich people go there to buy villas. If Yuhe City wasn't too far away, I would suggest everyone go there. Mu Ningxue said. Wang Mingyang smiled slightly and said, It doesn't matter. I will have the opportunity to go there in the future. Then, let's tentatively decide on the Yunhu Villa area. Okay. Aha! Everyone raised their hands and agreed that there were too many corpses left around the residential area, and the smell of decay was indeed unpleasant. After lunch, everyone sorted out the things they needed to take away. Suyu packed up many items at home. These were all her thoughts. Now that she has Wang Mingyang's mustard space, she doesn't need to worry about not being able to take them. Aunt Lu's life or death was uncertain, and Suyu had always had hidden worries in her heart, but she was smart but did not dare to speak out, for fear that Wang Mingyang would directly refuse. Although Wang Mingyang is laughing and joking with them now, he seems to be getting along well with them. But Suyu knew very well that it would be unrealistic for Wang Mingyang to take her to search all over Spring City just to find her mother. After getting along with each other for a week, Suyu had already discovered that although Wang Mingyang seemed kind, there was a coldness in his heart. Maybe I should try harder. Suyu bit his lip, found a watercolor pen, and left a message on the wall of his room. I hope my mother can see this message one day. After preparing everything, Suyu called Wang Mingyang in. Wang Mingyang walked in and saw the eye-catching characters on the wall. He felt a little moved but didn't say anything. He waved his hand and put all the things she prepared into the mustard space. After packing everything up, everyone went up to the rooftop, with several pitiful howls coming from around them from time to time. It is already the 8th day of the end of the world, and no matter how strong a person is, he cannot endure the hunger day by day. Last night's spiritual energy burst out, and many people must have awakened their powers. But in this way, the energy consumption of awakening powers will only make them hungrier. It is right to choose to fight for your life, but unfortunately, only a few can survive. Boss Wang, how do we get there? How about finding a car? Liu Chan looked around and said. Wang Mingyang nodded. Let's walk along the street and look for a car with a zombie in the driver's seat. It will definitely start. Okay, that's it. After being promoted by the burst of spiritual energy, everyone ate a lotus seed and were all promoted to the 2nd level. His physical fitness has been strengthened several times, and he can jump in various ways along the rooftop. He can only run over 10 meters with a little run-up, which can only be regarded as normal operation. After a while, several people discovered an off-road vehicle parked on the side of the road, with a struggling zombie tied to the driver's seatbelt. Liu Chan chuckled, stood on the top of the building and directly activated his telekinesis to pull out the zombie. This zombie has a big belly and looks like a successful person, with a bunch of keys hanging around his waist. It's a pity that it's still an ordinary zombie, otherwise it wouldn't be able to break free from the seatbelt. I killed this zombie without any trouble, searched its head, and found no crystal core. Wang Mingyang grabbed the key and said, "I'll drive, and you, Lei Bao, will open the way." "Okay. Drive as fast as possible, and make sure nothing can stop you." Liu Chan readily agreed. He was promoted to the second level last night, and slept until noon. He was full of energy at the moment. The zombie seemed to have mutated as soon as he parked the car. Wang Mingyang threw the key into the groove of the central control, fastened his seat belt, and pressed the start button. There was a roar and the vehicle started smoothly. "Yes, there's still half a tank of gas left." After asking the three of them to get in the car, Wang Mingyang turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator, hitting a car that was blocking the road. "Hey, please wait while I sit down." Liu Chan hurriedly fastened his seat belt. After complaining, his mental power exploded instantly, and the abandoned vehicles in front of him slid to both sides. Zombies are everywhere on the streets, and 1 or 2 first-level zombies can be found from time to time. At such times, Wang Mingyang would slow down the car, while Liu Chan controlled Wang Mingyang's Moing Hung Dao, slicing through the zombie's neck and retracting the crystal core in the head. Off-road vehicles speed by, occasionally encountering survivors fighting zombies. There are several houses on both sides of the street that seem to have been on fire, with billowing smoke rising. There are more and more people with superpowers, Mu Ningxue said quietly. Wang Mingyang looked forward. Definitely, the energy burst in the early hours of last night was not only beneficial to us, but others also had the opportunity to awaken their powers. The same goes for those zombies. There are so many first-level zombies, and I have never encountered them before. Suyu looked worried as he watched Liu Chan get back a crystal core again. This may be a global biological evolution. Let's see who can run faster. Liu Chan put away the crystal core and smiled calmly. Indeed, as long as we improve quickly enough, we won't be afraid of any threats. Wang Mingyang nodded, stepped on the accelerator, and the off-road vehicle roared and sped away. The journey was uneventful, and half an hour later, everyone saw a villa area around Yunhu Lake from a distance. That's right there. You should be able to get there by following this road. Mu Ningxue pointed to the villa area in the distance and said, Well, there are so few zombies here, I haven't even encountered a few. Suyu lay on the back of the seat and looked forward. There were only a few scattered zombies wandering along the way, and he couldn't help but be a little surprised. Normally, these are all luxurious villas, and ordinary people won't come here. Wang Mingyang laughed. This was also the reason why he chose this side. No matter how he fought during the day, he always wanted to sleep peacefully at night. After seeing too many dense zombies in the urban area, there were few people in the Yunhu Villa area, which made everyone feel more relaxed. The Yunhu Villa area is a large area, covering several kilometers of hillsides near the lake. Wang Mingyang and the other two drove slowly along the driveway, and after 10 minutes they arrived at the entrance of Yunhu Villa area. Liu Chan directly broke through the gate fence of the park, and also easily eliminated several zombies of door guards in suits. Mu Ningxue pointed the direction to Wang Mingyang. Go up, the best single-family villas are on Banpo. The villas here are already very nice. Suyu turned around and looked left and right. Among the lush trees, there were luxurious villas with courtyards that opened her eyes. Where are we? There are several single-family villas in Banpo, so that's what we call them. You'll know when you get there. Mu Ningxue held Suyu's hand and smiled. The vehicle was driving slowly, and Wang Mingyang keenly discovered that there were actually many survivors in this villa area. That's right, there are fewer people in the villa area, so the chance of survival in a zombie outbreak will be greater. Climb until halfway up the mountain, bypass some woods, and see several forks in front of you. Go to the middle, the mansion and courtyard there are the best. Mu Ningxue reminded Wang Mingyang at the right time. 2 minutes later, the off-road vehicle stopped at the entrance of a manor. Looking beyond the tall walls and courtyard gates, Everyone saw a corner of the mansion peeking out from among the tall trees in the distance. Hearing the sound of the car, 2 male zombies rushed out of the courtyard door. Before Wang Mingyang could take action, Li Yuchan grabbed the 2 zombies with his telekinesis and threw them down the slope. "Hey, I said you should try and see if there are any crystal nuclei." Wang Mingyang turned around and looked helplessly at Li Yuchan, the co-pilot, with a look of regret on his face. Li Yuchan, Su Yu and Mu Ningxue pursed their lips and smiled. The 2 women quickly got out of the car and went to push open the courtyard door with their horizontal knives. Wang Mingyang shook his head, drove the car in, and parked it in the vast courtyard. After getting off the car, Wang Mingyang looked around at the mansion. A modern-style 3-story building with a fountain in the middle of the courtyard and green lawns around it. The entire villa occupies a very large area. "Let's go in and take a look at this mansion. We can also experience the feeling of being rich." Wang Mingyang laughed and led the 3 of them towards the villa. Climb the steps, push open the door, and enter the spacious hall. The simple decoration makes people feel comfortable. Unfortunately, the 2 female zombies who were obviously dressed as nannies rushed out of the kitchen, which suddenly ruined this feeling. "Don't make it bleed, or you'll be washing the floor later." Wang Mingyang smiled at Li Yuchan, who was about to throw out the flying sword. Li Yuchan couldn't help but froze, and quickly grabbed the 2 zombies with his telekinesis. "Damn, you really can stand and talk without pain in your back." There were obviously other zombies in this villa, and the blood stains on the 2 female zombies told it all. Li Yuchan took the 2 zombies out and walked to the gate. After a while, he came back with a gray-white crystal core in his hand. Wang Mingyang had already taken Su Yu and Mu Ningxue to search the rooms one by one and clear out all the zombies inside. Li Yuchan sat bored on the sofa in the hall, turning his head to look at the backyard behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. Through the curtains, a large open-air swimming pool was vaguely visible, and Li Yuchan was immediately interested. Pushing open the door and going out, the blue open-air swimming pool comes into view. There is also a female corpse with a mutilated head lying on the edge of the swimming pool. "Supreme Tai saved Kutianzuan, it's a pity." Throwing the corpse down the mountain in the same manner, Li Yuchan returned to the swimming pool and controlled the water with his mind, cleaning the blood on the ground. Back in the living room, Wang Mingyang and the other 3 were already back. "Bao Bao, there are 2 zombies in the corridor above. Go and clean them up." Wang Mingyang crossed his legs and smiled. "Damn it, Lao Wang, you really treat me as a porter!" Li Yuchan shouted. Wang Mingyang spread his hands and said, "There is no way. Who made your telepathy easy to use? If we do it, we must not make the house dirty. You are cruel!" Li Yuchan thought about it. The next few people were going to live here, so it would be better to clean it up, and then turn to go upstairs. The 3 of them couldn't help but smile knowingly as they watched him go up angrily. "Take a short break at noon. In the afternoon we will go directly to the city to collect supplies." Wang Mingyang looked at the 2 women and said calmly. Mu Ningxue nodded. "Okay, I think it is necessary to take this opportunity to collect more crystal nuclei. It's necessary to collect supplies and improve your strength at the same time, without delaying both." Wang Mingyang knows very well that no matter how much material you have in the last days, it is not as important as your own strength. As time goes by, fewer and fewer materials can be preserved. In another month, a piece of bread can make a beautiful woman run naked for you. By taking advantage of rebirth and bringing out a strong team, any grudges can be settled when the time comes. He didn't know where his enemies from his previous life were now. Anyway, those people will not die unless there is an accident. Instead of searching blindly, it is better to immerse ourselves in development and quickly strengthen ourselves. When the time comes, we will strike with precision and let those who once thought they could always be on top. The higher you climb, the more painful you fall. The destruction of the body is nothing, the torture of the mind can relieve hatred even more. No one noticed that the owners of this villa were basically nannies, security guards and the like. It is estimated that when the zombies broke out, the owner of the mansion died somewhere. Several people also discovered 2 large basements, one of which contained a large amount of precious red and white wine. The other place is a cold storage, where many top-quality hams and steaks are piled up. What's even more surprising is that there is actually a silent generator as a backup power source. This mansion is very well equipped. Wang Mingyang sighed while putting some supplies in the mustard seed space in this underground warehouse. Su Yu's things were all put upstairs in a room she chose. After finishing the rectification, Mu Ningxue drove out a luxury off-road vehicle from an underground garage. Come on, everyone! Let's drive this car to the city. Mu Ningxue said hello, and the three of them quickly got into the car. The car roared, and Wang Mingyang smoothly welded the courtyard doors shut with his metal control ability. There are still survivors in this villa area. They won't come to steal our things, right? Su Yu said worriedly. Wang Mingyang waved his hand. It's okay. If you dare to steal, we will come to the door one by one. We have a reason to clean up these people. The few supplies in the basement at the moment are just the inventory of a campus supermarket. After the spiritual energy burst, Wang Mingyang believed that more awakened people would definitely appear in the army. Maybe Gong Zhan and the others will speed up the collection of supplies. Don't think that those who have not been reborn don't know the importance of materials. In terms of emergency measures for disasters and judgment of the overall situation, if there was no such thing as rebirth, Wang Mingyang felt that he would definitely be thrown out of countless streets. So now, as the mustard space expands again, Wang Mingyang feels that he is fully capable of taking the lead. Moreover, he felt that he was very close to being promoted to the 3rd level. He casually threw a lotus seed into his mouth. The effectiveness of the previous lotus seeds seemed to have been exhausted. After reaching the 3rd level, mustard space was promoted again. 100,000 cubic meters of space is likely to be greatly expanded again. When the time comes, don't you have many men and powerful firepower in the palace battle? There must be a lot of crystal nuclei. Come on. Let's make a deal. In the Nanqing district of Spring City, in a large shopping mall, a group of survivors were gathering in a shop on the 5th floor. In the store next door, a bald man was sitting on the sofa, with 2 men standing next to him. Brother Sun, several brothers have awakened their powers, can we? A young man carrying a watermelon knife pointed out the window at the Carrefour supermarket a few hundred meters away and asked. There are so many zombies outside the mall, and there are only a dozen of us, so it's probably a bit difficult. Do you expect those women to just eat the food? The bald middle-aged man with a sinister face and a thick gold chain around his neck curled his lips and slapped the woman next to him. Work harder for me. The woman was slapped, but she didn't dare to show any grievance. Haha, Mei Hong, you have to work harder. If you can't do it, just change to Little Cherry. Deng Liang had a sinister smile on his face. The girl named Mei Hong trembled all over and had to force herself to smile flatteringly. The bald man glanced coldly, seeming to be considering Deng Liang's proposal. Aren't those zombies sensitive to sound? Brother Sun, let's make some noise and attract them away first, the young man said with a smile. The bald man's eyes lit up. There are at least 1,000 zombies outside. What kind of movement can lure them away? Brother Sun, aren't there 2 kids who don't know how to live or die? Give them some blood and hang them on the wall behind them all. Hee hee. A cruel look flashed in the young man's eyes. It's a way, not bad. Deng Liang, you have a flexible mind. The bald man pondered for a second, then smiled and looked at Deng Liang with a hint of approval. Brother Sun, isn't this your cultivation? Deng Liang bent over with a flattering look on his face. Okay, let's do it like this. Tell the brothers to have a good meal at noon, and in the afternoon we will take action. The bald man finally groaned a few times, then kicked the woman beside him away, stood up and patted Deng Liang on the shoulder. However, I'm afraid just bleeding a little may not be effective enough. Remember to cut off the hands of those 2 boys and tie them tightly with the rope. Deng Liang trembled when he was slapped by the bald man. He nodded repeatedly. Brother Sun, you are very thoughtful. I will go and prepare now. Go! This woman gives it to you. The bald man waved his hand and glanced at the woman lying on the ground with disgust. Okay, thank you, brother Sun. Deng Liang's eyes lit up, he bowed repeatedly, picked up the coughing woman, and walked to the next door with gleaming eyes. Ho Jun, is there any news from the old man? The bald man walked to the window and looked out the window with a gloomy face. Standing upright, Ho Jun shook his head. Master Jie, judging from the current situation, we still have at least a few days. But this is already the 8th day. No matter how slow it is, it should be almost done, right? The bald man's son Jie said angrily. 6 days ago, the old man arranged for a plane to send a message. With me by my side, I guess the old man feels at ease. Ho Jun laughed and said a little proudly. Sun Jie turned around and looked at the bodyguard who had been with him for several years in the kiln. I'm not worried about this. You are so strong, my safety is not a problem. However, the old man has not contacted me, and I am afraid that things will not go well. Don't worry. It's not like you don't know the old man's abilities. He's just trying to deal with a few pedantic guys. But the energy exploded last night and everyone benefited. I'm afraid the old man's plan will be postponed. Ho Jun rubbed his chin and said with some uncertainty. There are still many strong men under those old men. It's better to postpone the old man's plan, so that he can call me back directly when the time comes. But it won't be so fun when we get there. Sun Jie chuckled, eyes widening. Reveal evil light. So what if you are strong? The old man's awakened superpower is very inexplicable. Ho Jun admired him with a look of admiration in his eyes. When Sun Jie heard this, he burst out laughing. Ha ha! You are right. I didn't expect that the old man would be so sick even though he had such a terminal illness. Ho Jun nodded. This shows that the old man's life should not be cut off, and he will be blessed with great blessings. There must be great blessings, and our Sun family deserves great blessings. Sun Jie chuckled, with a hint of ambition flashing in his eyes. Master Jie, do you want to go with us this afternoon? Ho Jun asked. He was standing aside just now and heard Deng Liang's plan clearly. Sun Jie thought for a moment and nodded. Go, why not go, since you are by my side anyway, not to mention. I also want to try it. How powerful is my ability? A black light appeared in Sun Jie's palm, and then he slapped his palm on the wooden table beside him. Sun Jie raised his palm calmly, and a palm print appeared on the wooden table. Black smoke floated inside, and a big hole was corroded in a moment. Master Jie's ability is very strong, but it's a pity that long-distance release consumes too much energy. Ho Jun admired. Sun Jie laughed and waved his hand. What are you afraid of? Just get more crystal cores to upgrade. Ho Jun nodded. He had awakened his superpower 4 days ago. After the aura broke out last night, he realized that he had become stronger, and he also tried to kill some zombies. After being reminded by a younger brother, I discovered several crystal nuclei. After many experiments, they were able to increase the energy in the body. This discovery made Sun Jie and Ho Jun overjoyed, and their self-confidence was even higher. Sun Jie took Ho Jun to the next door. In the 200-square-meter shop, there were about 30 survivors gathered. However, the dozen or so young women among them were all ashen-faced and dirty. In the corner, 2 boys with injuries all over their bodies were tied up with ropes found from who knows where. Deng Liang, how are the arrangements going? Sun Jie looked into the room with a look of disgust. Deng Liang quickly got up from the corner and ran over with his pants in a hurry. Brother Sun, everything has been arranged. We will set off after dinner. You kid, you're not going to die from exhaustion. Just take it easy. Sun Jie raised his foot and kicked Deng Liang's leg. Deng Liang pretended to stagger, with a smile on his face. Okay, take out the things, let the brothers eat a little, and we will set off in a while. Yes, brother Sun, I will do it right away. Deng Liang quickly nodded and bowed, turned around and called 2 people to follow him to get something next door. After everyone had eaten at noon, they threw a few pieces of bread to the women, leaving 4 or 5 boys with machetes as guards. Ignoring the hoarse cries of the 2 girls inside, I dragged the two boys who couldn't move outside. Everyone walked to the outermost window of the shopping mall. Without saying a word, Deng Liang grabbed a boy's arm and chopped it off. The blood splashed out immediately, but magically floated in the air. The next moment, it gathered directly into Deng Liang's hand, and quickly condensed into a bloody spike. When the gangsters around him saw this, they couldn't help but look envious. The boy let out a miserable cry and struggled in pain. Deng Liang laughed sinisterly, grabbed his other arm again, and slashed it hard with the machete in his hand. This boy was so hungry that he had no strength left. His arms were cut off one after another, and he was immediately in pain, and even his voice became hoarse. "Brothers, tie it up tighter, don't let this kid fall." Deng Liang picked up the two severed arms on the ground and threw them out of the window. The blood flowing from the broken arms condensed into bloody spikes under his control. The boys around him repeatedly said yes, and they scrambled to use a rope made from curtains to find a strong pillar, wrap it around a few times and tie it into a knot. Then they tied up the boy who was still howling miserably and threw him away. Out the window. The screams, coupled with the constant dripping of blood, immediately attracted most of the zombies in the small square downstairs. The other boy was so frightened by all these cruel methods that he shivered and his crotch was completely wet. "Master Jie! Master Jie! Please! Let me go! I can do whatever you want! Please let me go!" 55,555. The boy was so frightened that he kept twisting his body, crying and kowtow begging for mercy. At this moment, he completely abandoned this group of people in front of him, constantly rotating his girlfriend's hatred, and facing death, he only knew how to beg for mercy. "Deng Liang, it seems it's not enough. Let's put another one in." Sun Jie ignored it, wiped his bald head, looked at the zombies below and frowned. "Okay, brother Sun, do it now, we will definitely attract all the zombies." Deng Liang chuckled, grabbed the boy who was begging for mercy on the ground, and stabbed him twice more, adding 4 more spikes to his hand. The boys were already prepared, and after some operations, they threw the boy who kept crying down. The miserable howls of the two boys with broken arms finally led all the zombies in the square to this corner. "Brother Sun, it's okay. As long as we go out from the right, we won't face so many zombies." Deng Liang ran to Sun Jie's side and said flatteringly, "Not bad, you are smarter, let's go." Sun Jie nodded with satisfaction, waved his hand, and led a group of gangsters to the other side. Only 2 boys with broken arms were left outside the window, still screaming in agony. On the road around the lake, the off-road vehicle was speeding rapidly, heading straight towards Nanqing District. "There is a large commercial district in Nanqing District. I remember there is a Carrefour supermarket there," Suyu said softly. Wang Mingyang nodded. "Yes, maybe I can go to the mall and collect some clothes for everyone. Otherwise, it would be annoying to have blood stains on my body." "This is a good idea," Liu Chan said. Wang Mingyang rolled his eyes and said, "What does it have to do with you? Every time you finish a battle, your body is clean of dust. What clothes do you want? It's not my fault. I'm a long-range mage. The zombies died without getting close." "Where's the blood?" Liu Chan said aggrievedly, but his eyes were full of pride. "TCH." Wang Mingyang and the 3 of them showed their middle fingers together. The 3 of them can more or less fight with horizontal swords, and it takes a lot of energy to keep using their powers. Moreover, Suyu and Mu Ningxue also remembered Wang Mingyang's teachings and continued to practice their close combat abilities. While the 4 of them were laughing and joking, they soon saw the vast business district in the distance, with a huge shopping mall in the middle. Carrefour supermarket is across the street from the mall, and the road is completely blocked by abandoned cars. "Let's go around to the back. There should be a warehouse behind it." Wang Mingyang pointed to the side road, and Mu Ningxue turned the steering wheel and drove towards the back of the supermarket. Along the way, Liu Chan used his mental power to clear the way. Whether it was cars blocking the road or swarming zombies, they were all bounced away by invisible forces. The off-road vehicle soon drove to the back of the supermarket, where several large trucks loaded with goods were parked in the unloading area. Of course, there are also many zombies. The four of them quickly got out of the car, and the Zhutian exploded with a wave of mental power, sending all the surrounding zombies away. Mu Ningxue then waved her hand, and a thick wall of ice suddenly appeared outside the unloading area, freezing all the zombies outside. Wang Mingyang and Su Yu drew their knives in tacit agreement, and stepped forward to kill all the zombies near the truck. The four people gathered quickly and ran along a cargo passage. At the entrance of the passage, a metal door slammed shut. Following this passage, Wang Mingyang and the others cleared away some zombies wearing work clothes, and finally arrived in front of a large warehouse. Wow! There are a lot of things here, I just don't know what they are. Li Yuchan put his pants in his pockets and chuckled. Whatever it is, let's accept it first. Wang Mingyang shrugged and walked straight in. There were many zombies inside, so Su Yu and Mu Ningxue took the initiative to clean them up. Wang Mingyang walked slowly. Wherever he passed, the items inside disappeared out of thin air along with the shelves. He didn't even miss the forklifts and escalators that he occasionally encountered between the shelves. The main thing is that there is no grass growing. Seeing this situation, Su Yu and the others' eyes couldn't help but shine. It was one thing to hear Wang Mingyang say it, but seeing this scene with my own eyes, I was still extremely shocked. The entire warehouse, which was about 200 meters in front and back, and at least 50 meters wide in width, was moved by Wang Mingyang in just a few minutes. Brother Mingyang, how much space is left in your mustard space? Su Yu asked in shock. Wang Mingyang checked after hearing this. There are about 2/3 left. There is still a gap between the shelves in this warehouse. My mustard space does not need to be like this at all. Niobe! Go to the supermarket above and collect it too. Li Yuchan gave a thumbs up and pointed to the top of his head with a smirk on his face. Get up! Wang Mingyang waved his hand and led the three of them out of the empty warehouse. The sales area of this supermarket is on the 3rd floor. Finding the passage to the upper floor, the four people quickly climbed up. Coming out of the stairwell, Wang Mingyang suddenly discovered that there were many zombie corpses lying at the entrance of the supermarket. Has someone been here? Mu Ningxue frowned and whispered. Wang Mingyang. Whatever, let's go in and take a look, but be careful. Everyone immediately became alert. Li Yuchan had long been accustomed to being a supporter, and the mental shield was activated instantly. When I walked into the supermarket, I saw collapsed shelves. The clothes in the clothing section on the left side of the entrance were actually burning with flames. The heads of the zombie corpses on the ground were broken open. It was obvious that these survivors had discovered the existence of the crystal core. On the right is an area for daily necessities, including toothpaste, facial cleanser, shower gel, and the like. Wang Mingyang was not polite and put everything away, including the shelves. There were a lot of angry shouts coming from the front, as well as various secondary moves of the survivors, which seemed to be releasing supernatural powers. The four of them looked at each other, and quietly touched each other in tacit understanding. Cheng Ergu, stop using the fire. This place is full of food. If it burns out, I will kill you. Fuck! Li Jiaqiang, stop spitting anymore. Several bags of potato chips have been corroded by your spit. And you, Jin Jiapan. The shelves in the rampage have fallen down. Fuck! You bastards, your meal tonight will be halved. A bald man was holding his hands on his hips, gesticulating at a group of young men who were fighting zombies in front of him. Huh! Who is it? Come out! Next to the bald man, the man with his arms crossed and a smile on his face frowned, suddenly took out 2 daggers in his hands, turned around and shouted. Oh haha, I was discovered. Li Yuchan smiled evilly and raised his eyebrows at Wang Mingyang beside him. The 4 people walked out from behind the pillar. Although they were discovered, they did not panic at all. Who are you? Seeing that there was indeed someone there, Ho Jun took a step forward, stood in front of Sun Jia, and asked coldly to the 4 people not far away. Passing by, looking for something to eat. Wang Mingyang stood at the front, looking at this man with a vigilant look. Simply killing 1 or 2 people will not make Wang Mingyang wary, and the surge in mental power will make his senses more acute. The man in front of him had killed at least dozens of living people to have such evil aura. We have captured this place, you go to other places. Ho Jun frowned slightly. The 4 people in front of him showed no fear when they saw so many people on their side. This made him murmur in his heart, and he subconsciously didn't want to conflict with it. Goodbye, Ho Jun, they finally got here. It's not a big deal if they break up a little. Sun Jia on the side suddenly laughed, interrupted Ho Jun's words, and said something that made Ho Jun stunned. Sun Jia patted Ho Jun on the shoulder, and took a step forward to his side. For of you, where are you from? Have you suffered a lot these days? When we finish cleaning up the zombies, feel free to take as many of the things here as you can. Look, in this damn apocalypse, there are zombies everywhere. It's fate that we meet together. We are all human beings and we have to support each other, are you right? 2 sisters. Sun Jia had a kind smile on his face, his words were righteous, and he looked eager for justice. But those small eyes kept glancing at Siyu and Mu Ningxue in a vague way. After hearing this, Ho Jun knew what the young master was thinking without looking at Sun Jia's expression. Master Jia is right. I was too narrow-minded just now. Please wait a moment. The zombies in this supermarket are almost cleared. Ho Jun bowed in time and said, with a look of regret on his face. He had played this kind of operation countless times with Sun Jia before the end of the world, and he was familiar with it. Sun Jia was already filled with joy. The 2 women in front of him were unparalleled in beauty and clean. They were not like the dozens of playthings in the shopping mall, which were already soaked by playthings in the apocalypse. How could he be worthy of his status as young Master Jia? He has already made up his mind, these 2 girls. She must be raised well and become his master's beloved wife. Wang Mingyang looked at the performance of the 2 people in front of him in a funny way. If it weren't for the hidden eyes of the bald head, he would really be confused as to why these 2 people suddenly changed their minds. But thinking about it, the few words I heard vaguely just now had a Jianghu atmosphere. Wang Mingyang has concluded that this group of people are no longer good birds. In the apocalypse, the easiest people to survive are this kind of social bastards. It is not surprising at all to encounter a wave suddenly. We appreciate your kindness, Mr. Jia, but we are not short of food, so I won't disturb you. Let's retreat first. Wang Mingyang laughed, raised his hands to the 2 of them, and slowly backed away from them. There were a large number of people in this group, and it seemed that many of them had awakened their powers. Don't think that you should take this group of people lightly because they are low level. There are many people who have awakened all kinds of strange and weird abilities in the last days. If you are not careful, you may capsize in the gutter. Coupled with that, Ho Jun, with his sharp aura, he was obviously not mediocre. When the opponent's abilities are unknown, Wang Mingyang does not want to conflict with him for the time being. He has taken over such a large warehouse, and the few things in the supermarket are nothing. Seeing that Wang Mingyang didn't follow the path, Sun Jia's face instantly darkened. Brother Sun, the zombies have been cleared. Deng Liang, who had finished the battle behind him, shouted loudly and ran over with excitement on his face. Brother Sun! Master Jia? Wang Mingyang's heart moved, and he looked at the bald head again, and a piece of information suddenly appeared in his mind. Sun Jia, humph, it turns out it's him. Mu Ningxue, who was beside her, had a cold look in her eyes and murmured in a low voice. You know him? Wang Mingyang tilted his head and whispered in a low voice. Of course I do. You should have heard about the KTV murder case that once shocked Spring City. Mu Ningxue grimaced and lowered her voice. It's really that Sun Jia? Isn't he sentenced to death? Wang Mingyang was shocked. He really knew about this case a few years ago, but hadn't the person involved, Sun Jia, been shot? The death penalty can be changed to a suspended death sentence, the suspended death sentence can be changed to an indefinite period, and the suspended sentence can be commuted. Do you understand? Mu Ningxue's words were full of ridicule, but also helpless. Wang Mingyang and the other 2 fell silent. This kind of thing is really ironic. Behind Sun Jia, a group of younger brothers had already gathered around him, all covered in blood. The eyes of the four people looking at Wang Mingyang were full of evil and evil. Brother, look, the zombies have been cleared away. You two sisters, just take whatever you want. If it's not enough, brother, I will help you. Sun Jia chuckled, but his hands behind his back made vague gestures. No need, Brother Sunday. There are so many of you, so we will definitely need you more, so we won't. Just because you don't want it, doesn't mean these two girls don't need it. Before Wang Mingyang finished speaking, he was interrupted by Sun Jia with a wave of his hand. We don't need it either. Let's go. When Mu Ningxue heard this, she spoke coldly, her delicate body tilted slightly, and she wanted to leave. Ha ha, these two brothers can leave, but the two girls should not leave. There are so many zombies outside. It would be safer to follow me and have so many people protecting you. Sun Jia's eyes turned cold, and he stopped pretending. He waved his hand and the boys behind him gathered around him with lewd smiles on their faces. You! Mu Ningxue's pretty face turned cold, and with a wave of her hand, several ice picks suddenly appeared around her. I was already very disgusted with this Sun Jia, but I didn't expect that he wouldn't let me go. Humph! We have more superpowers! Take action! Sun Jia snorted coldly, and upon hearing this, all the boys around him immediately activated their powers and blasted towards Wang Mingyang and Li Yuchan. These people obviously wanted to kill the men and leave only the beautiful women. Seeing the opponents move, Wang Mingyang stopped hiding and snorted coldly. The horizontal knife in his hand split instantly, and several sharp blades were shot directly at Sun Jia. The two sides were 10 meters apart. Although the gangsters had already prepared, they immediately released fireballs, ice picks, wind blades, etc. However, these people have just awakened their powers, and their power is not comparable to that of Mu Ningxue, who has been promoted to the second level. The ice picks directly smashed through the opposite abilities and pierced into the shoulders of several gangsters. Half of their bodies were instantly frozen as blood shot out. Court death! Seeing that the opponent dared to fight back, Ho Jun swung his two daggers like lightning, directly knocking away the blades, and then his body suddenly turned into a black smoke and disappeared. The next moment, two daggers appeared directly beside Wang Mingyang. Buzz! There was a soft cry, and the two daggers suddenly pierced into the void. The tips of the daggers seemed to be pierced on a layer of film, but they were still unable to move forward. Ho Jun appeared in midair with a stunned look on his face, with black smoke still floating around him. Li Yuchan's pupils narrowed as he released his mental shield. Ho Jun's stab was obviously very powerful, and even Li Yuchan felt the pressure. The figure flashed again, and Ho Jun turned into a black smoke and returned to Sun Jia's side. The blade that was knocked away shot out again under Wang Mingyang's control. Don't hold back, kill! Wang Mingyang shouted coldly. When he figured out that the bald man in front of him was the legendary Sun Jia, Wang Mingyang already had murderous intent in his heart. Although he is no longer a good person, what Sun Jia did was simply outrageous to both humans and gods. Since trouble has already arisen, it would be best to kill him directly. That Ho Jun's ability is a bit tricky, much like the A-level ability Shadow Strike. It is similar to space teleportation, but there is no space fluctuation. Li Yuchan's telepathy shield protected all four of them, and was continuously reinforced at the same time. When Su Yu and Mu Ningxue heard this, they hesitated for a moment. They couldn't help but look at each other, and the power of their powers suddenly increased, and they began to strike cruelly. There were nearly 20 people on the opposite side, but more than a dozen people had awakened their powers. All of a sudden, they were firing all kinds of powers including venom, wood thorns, ice cones, and fireballs. The two agile awakeners quickly pulled Sun Jia back and protected him, while the other with a shield type tried his best to put a shield on him. Ho Jun's figure disappeared again and appeared directly next to Wang Mingyang, slashing rapidly with two daggers. Snort! Wang Mingyang couldn't help but snorted when he saw that Ho Jun's target was him. Take the initiative to break away from Li Yuchan's mental shield to relieve him of pressure. The blades around him merged into ink shadows again, and the sword swung out after images, slashing wildly with Ho Jun. Under the protection of Liu Chan, Mu Ningxue and Su Yu started a fight with the opponent. The violent output of the two second-level superpowers immediately defeated the opponent. The dark flame sword light exploded in the crowd, and the flames immediately wrapped around several people. Amidst the screams, the smell of barbecue wafted away. The two speed-type users avoided the attacks of the two women. Before they could get close to the three of them, they were knocked away by Liu Chan's invisible telekinesis. It was penetrated by two thick ice picks in midair and fell to the ground without moving. Several magnetic bursting fireballs were shot at Sun Jie, who was retreating more than 10 meters away. The two gangsters guarding him were confused and thought they were ordinary fireballs. He slashed with the knife with disdain, but was sucked into the fireball and became unstable. Two explosions and roars were accompanied by the two men's miserable howls. Sun Jie's face turned pale. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have imagined that the four people in front of him, who he thought were a bit cowardly, could be so strong. In just 10 seconds, all the dozen or so people under his command were dead and only 5 or 6 were left. Sun Jie gritted his teeth, took out 2 pistols from his arms, and fired wildly at Wang Mingyang. When the gunfire rang out, Wang Mingyang's pupils shrank, his mental power surged instantly, and he spread a layer of metal control ability in front of the 4 people. The bullet arrived in an instant, but floated strangely in front of Wang Mingyang. The next moment, the bullet shot back, and the shield in front of Sun Jie made a series of clanging sounds and then shattered. "Master Jie, leave quickly!" Ho Jun saw that the situation was not good. The man in front of him was extremely powerful, both in melee combat and with supernatural powers. Even though he was a Special Forces soldier and had the elusive power of Shadow Strike, he couldn't hurt him in the slightest. I couldn't help but feel anxious in my heart, and hurriedly yelled at Sun Jie. "If you don't eat the toast, you will be fined with wine. I want to run away now, but it's too late." Wang Mingyang snorted coldly, looked at the right moment, and activated his oxygen control ability, directly pulling away the oxygen within 2 meters around him. Ho Jun just appeared next to Wang Mingyang, and his figure suddenly stagnated. The next moment, a horizontal knife struck head-on. In the midst of lightning and flint, Ho Jun endured the sudden suffocation, and his figure turned into a black smoke again, flashing back to Sun Jie's side. "Master Jie, I'll cover you and you can use the opportunity to activate your special powers." Ho Jun gave a low shout and prepared to attack again. Protruding. With a knife slashing through the air, Wang Mingyang couldn't help but curse secretly. This ability was really slippery. The space cut disappeared in a flash, directly cutting towards Ho Jun. This Ho Jun used to be an elite Special Forces soldier, and had a strong sense of danger. When there was no time to spare, he flashed through the space cut again and appeared next to Wang Mingyang. Seeing that the pistol had no effect, Sun Jie threw it aside. He raised his right hand and pointed it at Wang Mingyang. Energy surged through his body and he began to hold back his ultimate move. The sword slashed horizontally, and sparks collided with the 2 daggers. Unfortunately, Wang Mingyang's control of space cutting is not enough. Otherwise, the moment Ho Jun flashes out, he can directly launch a space cut next to him. When the time comes, Ho Jun will die. With a thought, nearby metal objects turned into threads and gathered together. Ho Jun's pupils shrank sharply when he saw this, and even the energy-covered dagger in his hand had a tendency to melt. Ho Jun dodged again, leaving a trail of black smoke in front of Wang Mingyang's eyes, blocking his sight. The next moment, Wang Mingyang's pupils tightened, and he glanced 10 meters away. Sun Jie's palm was glowing with a rich black light, and he was pointed at him from a distance. With a sense of crisis in his heart, Wang Mingyang didn't have time to think too much, and turned to one side. A space-cutting shot flashed in front of Sun Jie. The sharp cutting thread directly cut off Sun Jie's right arm. "Ah!" Sun Jie let out a scream and his arms fell downwards. At the same time, black light burst out from the palm of his hand. A dark palm print directly corroded a large hole in the ground. The situation downstairs can be vaguely seen. When Wang Mingyang saw this, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. With a wave of his hand, several bursting fireballs shot over. A violent explosion sounded, and the counters around Sun Jia were blown away, and the flames suddenly burst into flames. Two figures flew out with flames all over their bodies, and a space cut flashed away between Wang Mingyang's thoughts. Ho Jun, sensing the danger, pushed Sun Jia in the air, but the black line had already crossed his wrist. Ah! A scream came from Ho Jun's mouth, and his figure turned into black smoke and disappeared. The next moment, he flashed to the exit door in the distance. Ignoring Sun Jia, who fell to the ground, his figure flashed again and disappeared. Fuck, let him run away! Wang Mingyang couldn't help but curse angrily. This guy's abilities were too slippery. He could advance, attack, retreat, or defend. And he is extremely decisive. He can't do anything when he sees something, and he just runs away. It's really possible that it's an A-level shadow flicker. Although it can only move short distances, this ability is famous for its low energy consumption. According to Ho Jun's second-level strength, it is estimated that he can use it 10 or 20 times in a row. To deal with this ability, Mu Ningxue's ice and snow ability is easier to use. Liu Chan and 3 others killed the other gangsters, leaving only Deng Liang, who could turn blood into spikes, waiting for questioning. After Deng Liang's whole body was frozen, leaving only his head, Mu Ningxue and the others ran to Wang Mingyang. But all he saw was a bloody palm and an arm. Sun Jia, who had extensive burns all over his body, was holding his shoulders and wailing. Where's that guy named Ho Jun? Mu Ningxue glanced around and asked with a frown. Let him run away, it's too slippery. Wang Mingyang said angrily and kicked Sun Jia directly in the stomach, causing Sun Jia to howl miserably again. Run away? Now we're in trouble. Mu Ningxue frowned, her tone full of worry. Trouble? What's the trouble? This trash has a good father. It's the end of the world, why are you still afraid of him? Wang Mingyang snorted coldly. Although he let Ho Jun run away, he was not worried at all. He had also heard about Sun Jia's social connections. This guy's parents seemed to be high-ranking officials. Otherwise, how could a person who was sentenced to death a few years ago appear here? But now, it's the end of the world, and maybe his parents have died somewhere. Oh, he does have a good father. Mu Ningxue sighed, looking at Sun Jia with a look of extreme disgust. Wang Mingyang tilted his head and looked at her. Do you know who his father is? Well, Sun Jia's father is the commander of the Spring City Military Division, with the rank of senior colonel, and his name is Sun Jian. Mu Ningxue said quietly. It would be fine if Sun Jian were the commander of other military divisions, but unfortunately, he happened to be the commander of the Chunqing Military Division. If they are still alive now, I am afraid that Ho Jun's escape will bring them a series of troubles. Wang Mingyang and the other 2 frowned when they heard this. Ha ha! You know you're afraid! I'm telling you, my old man is still alive! And now the entire Chunqing military region is under his control. Let me go quickly and kneel down to beg for mercy. Ha ha! Ho Jun has escaped. My old man will definitely know about this. If I have any shortcomings, he will make it impossible for you to survive or die. Ha ha! After hearing Mu Ningxue's words, Sun Jia covered his shoulders, curled up and laughed wildly. Sun Jia's father is his biggest support. At this moment, he feels that if Wang Mingyang and others know that his father is still alive, they will definitely not dare to take action against him again, and their tone becomes more and more arrogant. What should we do? Should we let him go? Suyu asked worriedly. This guy's background is indeed somewhat Alexander-like. Wang Mingyang snorted coldly and slowly squatted down. How is it possible to let him go? To deal with this kind of person, we either don't offend him in the first place, or we eradicate him directly. The sinister words made Sun Jia, who was laughing crazily, hesitate, and his eyes became frightened. No! You can't kill me! My father is the commander of the military region. he will immediately take control of the entire military region and become the king of this land. As long as you don't kill me, I promise to forget the past. You are so strong, you can conquer the world with me. When the time comes, I will definitely let you enjoy all the glory and wealth. Whatever you want, there are countless beauties for you to choose from. Sun Jie shouted at the top of his lungs. At this moment, he could no longer indulge in beauty, and his heart was filled with deep regret. He racked his brains to get Wang Mingyang to let him go. Before life and death, the revenge of a broken hand is nothing. Haha! Do you still remember the young couple you tortured and killed a few years ago? At that time, they must have begged you for mercy in every possible way. But you abused that girl in front of her boyfriend. In the end, they tortured and killed 2 people. When doing this, did you ever think that one day, you would also fall into the hands of others? Wang Mingyang held emoing and kept making gestures on Sun Jie's body. The cold blade made Sun Jie tremble all over, and a puddle of water gradually spread from under his buttocks. Don't blame me. You really don't blame me. It was Ho Jun who did it, not me. It's Ho Jun who insists on sleeping with that girl. I don't like her at all. It's really not me, please let me go. I swear, as long as you let me go, I will never cause trouble for you. I swear. Sun Jie felt endless fear in his heart. He blamed Ho Jun in various ways and begged for mercy with snot and tears. What a pity, I don't believe you. So many evil souls are looking at you. They all asked me to praise you. Wang Mingyang stood up and looked at Sun Jie, who kept begging for mercy with cold eyes. The oxygen control ability was activated, and the oxygen concentration around Sun Jie began to rise. Wang Mingyang waved emoing, and the sharp tip of the knife wiped a few sparks on the floor. Sparks splashed onto Sun Jie's body, a flame suddenly ignited, and the smell of roasted meat spread again. Sun Jie let out a hoarse scream and kept twisting, rolling, begging for mercy, and cursing on the ground. Wang Mingyang pulled the 3 of them back a few meters and looked at the burning Sun Jie indifferently. He also considerately continued to activate his oxygen control ability to keep those flames burning. Gradually, Sun Jie's voice lowered until there was no movement. As the oxygen concentration increases, the flame gradually turns dark blue. In the end, Sun Jie turned into a pile of ashes. Wang Mingyang used his metal power to condense a shovel and directly scooped up the ashes. Throw the shovel and ashes out of the window, and the ashes will scatter in the wind. Wang Mingyang did what he said. Promoted Sun Jie. Mu Ningxue and the others stood aside quietly, watching Wang Mingyang's various operations. It wasn't until the ashes were scattered that Li Yuchan stepped forward and patted Wang Mingyang on the shoulder. I said, Boss Wang, what did this bald donkey do? It makes you so disgusted. Wang Mingyang shook his head, with a wry smile on his lips, and looked at Mu Ningxue. Let Miss Mu speak, she should know better. Mu Ningxue sighed softly and nodded. You already know this guy's father. His mother Li He is the deputy director of the Dongqing District Public Security Bureau in Chunqing. She is protected by big guys from the military and police. This Sun Jie can be said to be a super dandy. A few years ago, this guy was caught for a long period of robbing our ****G and gang our ****G women on the street. After investigation, many of them included young girls under the age of 16. In fact, these things have been covered up, and he was eventually arrested because of a KTV murder case. Sun Jie fell in love with a little girl, and abducted a young couple into his own KTV. He treated the 2, they tried their best to humiliate them, and in the end they brutally tortured and killed the young couple. Their methods were so cruel that it was heinous. In the end, it was the boy's parents who had some connections who alerted the provincial party committee, and then Sun Jie was brought to justice, and he was sentenced to death in the first instance. Hearing this, Li Yuchan and Su Yu couldn't help but gnash their teeth. Li Yuchan even asked in confusion, Since you have been sentenced to death, why are you still here? It has to be said that he has a good father and a good mother. Mu Ningxue continued helplessly. Sun Jie refused to accept and filed an appeal, and his parents produced some evidence to shirk the responsibility of his main culprit. It was given to another person and he was given a suspended death sentence. Then the suspended death sentence becomes indefinite, the indefinite period becomes fixed term, and the fixed term becomes reduced sentence. Hearing this, Li Yuchan couldn't help but curse. Fuck! Is there any justice in this? Tianli? Lei Bao, you have been in the Taoist temple for a long time, right? In this world, to put it bluntly, those in power have the final say. Wang Mingyang spat and mocked. Indeed, this matter is not a secret among the upper circles. It's impossible for the big guys in the provincial party committee to pay attention to this matter all the time, so they took advantage of it for Sun Jian and Li He. Mu Ningxue shook her head. As a proud daughter of heaven, she had long been accustomed to the dirty transactions of the upper class. Li Yuchan gritted his teeth, muttered words, and kept gesturing in the air with his fingers. Bao Bao, what are you doing, giving him salvation? Are you okay? Wang Mingyang asked curiously when he saw this. I will save his uncle. Taoist master, I am reciting the soul-calling spell to bring back the soul of this scumbag, and then light a sky lantern to burn him for 7749 days. Li Yuchan pinched the seal with his hand. His face was sullen, and he cursed with a fierce look in his eyes. Wang Mingyang couldn't laugh or cry when he heard this. Come on, you still think you really have a soul? If you can really summon souls, I will live broadcast standing on my head to wash my hair. Wang Mingyang's flag had been set. Unfortunately, Li Yuchan had been tinkering for a long time, but there was no response, so he had to put down his hands dejectedly. Mu Ningxue and Suyu also smiled a little. The originally depressing atmosphere suddenly became a little weird when this fake Taoist priest disturbed them. Let's go, didn't you leave someone here to ask if there is any useful information? Wang Mingyang stopped Li Yuchan, who was still angry, and walked towards Deng Liang, who was frozen by Mu Ningxue. When the four of them returned to the lump of ice, Deng Liang was so cold that his face turned blue. Tell me, where is your group's base? Do you have any accomplices? Wang Mingyang patted Deng Liang's cheek with a horizontal knife. This kid's blood control ability was actually quite good, but it was a pity that he followed the wrong person. Brother, I'm just a handyman, please let me go. Deng Liang begged with trembling lips. Stop talking nonsense. If you answer any wrong questions, I'll chop off one of your hands first. Wang Mingyang gestured with the knife on his arm and said coldly. Yes. Brother, I said. Hi, we were on the first floor of the shopping mall opposite, drinking and singing all night long. But at noon the next day, zombies suddenly broke out. Sun Jia's bodyguard Ho Jun took us. I fled upstairs to the mall and have been staying on the 5th floor for the past few days. I went out to look for supplies at noon today. Most of the people came out. Only a few boys were left to look after the house, and a dozen women. Brother, I've said everything I need to say, please just spare me. I have an 80-year-old mother at home, and a 3-year-old baby waiting for me. I can't die. Deng Liang recounted intermittently, crying with runny nose and tears. Do you think we are fools? You are only in your 20s, and your mother gave birth to you when she was 60? Wang Mingyang and others looked at each other in confusion. Did this bastard treat them as idiots? I dare to say this kind of bad routine in martial arts novels. My mother really was born when she was 60 years old. I don't dare to lie to you, brother. Deng Liang hesitated when he heard the words, and then he begged in a panic. It's really. Wang Mingyang laughed angrily, held his forehead with his left hand, and slashed down with the sword in his right hand. Deng Liang's crying and begging voice suddenly stopped, and a line of blood appeared from the center of his forehead. Let's go, after collecting these things, let's go to the shopping mall opposite. Wang Mingyang swung the knife, turned around and walked towards the food section of the supermarket. Li Yuchan curled his lips and turned to follow. Su Yu and Mu Ningxue glanced at the dead Deng Liang silently, and then left with complicated eyes. You two have killed someone today, can you still adapt? Wang Mingyang asked calmly while using the mustard space to collect things. It's okay. After killing so many zombies, Killing a few living people doesn't seem that hard to accept. The two women were silent for a while, before Mu Ningxue spoke first. If we don't kill them, we might be the ones who die. Suyu murmured in a low voice. Wang Mingyang smiled calmly. Death may also be a kind of relief. I think it will be eye-opening in a while. The three of them were a little confused, and then Mu Ningxue trembled and looked at Wang Mingyang hesitantly. Would someone who can follow Sun Jie be a good person? Didn't that kid say that there are a few accomplices in the shopping mall opposite and… Wang Mingyang immediately laughed and concentrated on putting away the food that could still be used. Although the words were not spoken clearly, they all heard clearly what Deng Liang said just now. Looking back at this moment, the three of them suddenly felt a bad premonition. The fire in the supermarket was still burning. Wang Mingyang casually removed the oxygen from the fire area, and the flames quickly disappeared. It took a few minutes to collect everything that could be used in the supermarket. Wang Mingyang turned some kitchen utensils into iron blocks and stuffed them into the mustard space, leaving only a small part of the metal, which he turned into armbands and hid in his sleeves. When everything settled, the four people jumped out of the window and ran straight to the shopping mall opposite. The two boys hanging on the window on the other side of the mall had already turned into corpses. But the blood still dripped down occasionally, and the corpses below did not completely spread.